We'll call our meeting to order. If you would all please rise, we'll pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for being here tonight. Brian, if you'll do our roll call, please.
Kelly,
Here.
Steve,
Here.
Mike,
Here.
Nancy,
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
I'm here.
Okay. We'll go right into our public comment section. I'm going to start with our Brown County Sheriff Gordon Ellis. I believe you have a report you wish to share with us all here tonight, so you have the podium.
Thank you for allowing me a few minutes of your time. So what I've done is I've provided the councilman and I believe the mayor with a summary report for 2022. So what we try to do in the sheriff's office at the beginning of each year is we'll try to hit some of the villages and give just a report on the activity for the last year. So it's a really just a 4-page summary. So on page 1, what Wells will do is we'll let you know that the annual report you're looking at is a 2022 with 2021 added as a comparison year. We like to get 3 years in, but 2020 was the year of COVID. So all of the statistics would have been skewed from that year. So we're just looking at 21 and 22. So if you go to the first slide, or correction, second page, what you'll see is a patrol activity report. So in 2022, you can see that there was an increase in activity all across the board for 2022. For example, calls for service. In 2021, there were 18,333. In 22, 19,543. So we had an increase of about 1,210 calls for service. We also had 1,568 offense reports. And an offense report is any report we take that requires that a criminal investigation has to be initiated. So that's an increase of 205 reports. And then arrests were up. We had 529 arrests in 2022, and that's an increase of 58 from 2021. Traffic citations were up and been asked what was that attributed to, and what we're seeing was just an increase in traffic slowly building from 21 to 22 as people got back out. So we stayed pretty active in 22. If you go to the next page, please, there's some selected activity as far as crimes that we investigated. So you'll see an increase in assaults. That increase included all assaults, would be simple assault, misdemeanor, felonious assaults, and assaults on police officers. So we saw an increase in 2022. In 21, there were 5 assaults on police officers. In 2022, there were 8. So you just see an increase in that. Domestic violence was up. Felony drug crimes increase in 2022. And so when we looked at that, the biggest increase in drug crimes for 2022 was actually an increase in the seizure of methamphetamine, specifically crystal methamphetamine. That increase kind of mirrors what was going on in the state of Ohio. So if you look at the methamphetamine seizures and testings for 2022 across the state of Ohio, methamphetamine accounted for about 39% of all illegal drugs seized and tested by BCI. So we saw the same thing in the county. That became methamphetamine, or crystal meth, became the #1 drug of seizure in 2022. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, crystal meth is a methamphetamine derivative that is produced in Mexico, moved across the border, and then into the United States. It is not produced locally. Probably several years ago, you remember the crime of cooking meth or meth manufacturing, local labs. We haven't had a meth lab report in over 2 years. And the reason for that is crystal meth is now, it's much more potent and it's much more plentiful. So when you ask, what's the impact of opening of the border, this is it. So in 2021, if you were to purchase an ounce of meth, crystal meth on the street, it costs you about $1,250. Now you can get it from $250 to $450 an ounce. So it's much more plentiful, and we're seeing that trend, unfortunately, here. Good news for 22, there was a drop in felony sex crimes, and we appreciated that. A slight increase in burglaries and B&E, and actually a reduction in theft. You know, I told you that we saw an increase in crimes of violence. We did have one aggravated murder in 2022 and 3 attempted murders. So are seeing some increase there. Fortunately, the individual, the suspect in the aggravated murder, has been arrested and been in jail for some period of time. Same for the 3 attempted murders. So we have suspects and have identified them or arrested them at this point. Finally, the last slide there talks about booking. So a booking in the jail means that somebody was brought into the Brown County Jail, processed, and placed in the jail. So our bookings in 2021 were 1,542. In 2022, there was 1,605. So if you think about that, remember I said we had 529 arrests from the Brown County Sheriff's Office. So the Sheriff's Office accounted for approximately 1/3 of the inmates that were booked into the county jail. The other 2/3 were brought in either by other law enforcement agencies within the county, probation department, or we picked up someone and held them for another county, or sometimes occasionally another state. So if you take that average, we were booking approximately a little bit over 4 individuals a day in 2022 into the county jail. So we stayed pretty busy. So that's kind of it, a year in review. So, and I'm more than willing to answer any questions. And I apologize if I ran through that rather quickly, but I'm open to any questions you may have. Yes, ma'am.
How many inmates can the jail hold at max?
At max, we can hold 110. By classification too.
These, you answered the question about the drugs. These other, the assault, burglary, is the trend of that pretty similar for all of Ohio? I mean, I know the numbers aren't, but, or does it just depend on the area?
Yeah, you're going to see, I think, particularly with drugs, Ohio, that trend is pretty stable across the state. So unfortunately, you're seeing that across the state. So the challenge with that is the type of impacts that methamphetamine has for those who abuse it. You're probably familiar with for a time period, we had a significant problem with heroin abuse. Individuals who are on heroin tend to be lethargic. Many times they're semi-conscious. When you deal with them, they were generally not violent. Methamphetamine, different story. So it's an amphetamine. It can create some hallucinogenic effects. And the people that we deal with that are high on meth are usually very agitated. So there's a tendency for much more violent confrontation with them. And we are seeing that kind of across the state. As far as the one trend that, as you look and, we deal with other agencies, been a pretty steady increase. We saw a drop this year, but a pretty steady increase in sex abuse crimes. So, and we continue to see that. Now, I think this year, unfortunately, if we continue on the trend that we are right now, we'll probably see that increase in 23. Now, year is young, so we'll see. But about a month and a half ago, we had a trial, and an individual was sentenced to 3 life sentences plus 30 years. That was all sexual abuse convictions. So that's unfortunate, but we are dealing with that.
Chief, I would assume that your activities would be in kind of a parallel type of thing, but just on a different scale, I would guess. Okay. We don't envy any of our law enforcement's detail that they have to do, but we're very appreciative of what they do. So bringing these things to light, opens our eyes a little bit more too, Sheriff. So we appreciate you coming here. Is there any other questions the council may have?
Well, as always, thank you for your time. We do appreciate, we have a solid level of cooperation in Brown County between the agencies and the sheriff's office, and that's always helpful. I know it takes a team effort to deal with the crime in the county. We appreciate that. We're cognizant of the fact that a lot of the activity that occurs, particularly with the resources and the availability of resources in the county, we're dependent on every agency, and so we appreciate that. And a lot of the most successful investigations we have been cooperative efforts. And the final thing we do is we try to work very diligently on keeping the jail open and available. Today we had 104 inmates. So we try to keep that door open and moving. I know sometimes it gets full, and we're constantly pulling the game with working with the courts and working with the probation departments to keep it open. But we realize that's the one facility that every law enforcement agency in the county depends upon. And as always, we are always willing to back up any agency or provide any additional assistance that we can. So thank you so much, and thank you all for your time.
Always welcome back. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on along. We'll just keep on going on that side. Delbert, do you have anything to address council? Dave Gunther, do you wish to address council? Sir? You wish to address council, please? Just announce your name for our streaming audience, please.
Chris Korzik, I live on South Main Street. Back in October, I spoke to the council about a dog attack on my dog, and I'm here for an update. I realize that these things are handled through the civil court. That being said, I've learned since then that the dog's owner has quit his job, has no funds, is living off of family members. And again, now I know we've had the discussions about how hard it is to enforce laws about specific dogs, but at a minimum, we have to look at insuring dogs over a certain size. I don't know what that entails, but I'm lucky that I had the means to help my dog. A lot of people in this community, they don't have those means. And I'm angry that, this person, I'm not saying that he chose to quit his job because of that, but he's no longer employed and has made no effort to make things right. My attorney recommended I drop it because I will spend more money trying to pursue this civilly than I would ever see in return. If we had an insurance ordinance, this wouldn't be an issue. At the end of the day, when you factor in my travel, when you factor in the days I took off of work, this cost me over $4,000, and I'll never see a penny of it back. And, I'm angry. So that's where I stand. I know we talked in a few meetings, not just the council meeting, but some of the others. And, I just wanted to say my piece again. Thank you.
Any comments for council?
Yeah, I've got
Go right
a
ahead.
couple of things. I did a little research on this. I know that we rely on the basic code and the ORC, but I did notice that some of the other municipalities had other things in place where, besides being ticketed and fined, they could require that dogs go to obedience school. They may have to be, the owner has to be with them at any time they're outside of their property. Some of them, if they're on their property, they have to be in some kind of pen or whatever with a top on it. Is there any reason that we can't do something like that? I just feel like since we don't have anything local, even if we don't do much more than what's in the basic code or in the ORC, at least it gives people something that, they can look at, and this is what it says. But is there a reason we couldn't do some of those other things that other municipalities do?
I think some of that was discussed in emergency services. Mr. Korzick, we had at that meeting, we had the people from the Brown County Animal Shelter there, or the Humane Society, well, both. We had Prosecutor Corbin there. I'm going from memory, it's been a few months back, but I think one of the problems is just simple enforcement. Our police department is thin as can be already, and I hate to put words in Prosecutor Corbin's mouth, but it's specialized work that requires, specialized equipment for them and some time and stuff like that. And we could put my recollection of what he said is that there's things that we could put in place, but it would just, it'd be one more layer of enforcement on the police department. And it's, it might be the right thing to do. I'm not trying to dismiss it. I'm just saying I'm not sure how, again, I feel like I'm talking for him, but how well we would be able to police some of those.
Why
rules
can't
that
we
we put
use
in place.
county resources? Why if something happens like this, if our ordinance says blah, 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 why can't we call the dog warden and why can't we, use at some point municipal court if we have to for our own ordinance? I mean, we use county resources all the time,
We use them now when we have a dog issue.
but we don't have anything in
But
writing.
at the time you call somebody about the dogs, they don't do nothing about it.
Right.
Even if the person standing outside the dog and dog tries to attack you, it's like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Like, give me a ticket for shooting.
I mean, I know. what
Yeah.
you do.
Wait, let's have some order. Let's talk. If you wish to talk, we'll let you come up, but let's do one at a time here. Mark,
So are there any townships or villages that have insurance for their dogs?
So usually communities that adopt an insurance ordinance usually tie it to a certain breed of dog or a kind of dog. You often see this with pit bulls, for instance, or a mix of pit bulls, because what they do is they declare them a vicious dog and then say, because they're a vicious dog, you need to have a certain level of insurance. I can't remember Mr. Korsick's situation. I don't remember what kind of dog it was that attacked your. It wasn't a pit bull though, was it?
It was a mix, but I think it had
Yeah.
a majority pit bull.
Okay, so what you have to do though is you have to define, unless you just require all dogs in the village to have a certain level of insurance, but that might be overkill.
What about by size?
Pardon me?
By size?
Well, again, some criteria. But yeah, communities have it, and what they typically do is they license them, and that's how they monitor it, because if they're unlicensed, then the police can cite them for that. But I think Prosecutor Corbin is 100% right when he says enforcement is an issue. Resources are hard for the county, and they would be hard for the village, but it would fall on our police department, I think, to enforce that. We can't ask the county to enforce our ordinance when it would come to a requirement like that we imposed that the county didn't.
If our ordinance just mimics the basic code in the ORC,
We
can't
could
we?
report a violation of the county or the state's code to the county, but I think as the gentleman pointed out, we would be at the mercy of the county to enforce that, and they can do so as they're available.
Can I speak? Can I speak? You're in charge of the meeting. I just want to be sure.
go ahead, Mark.
So I want Chris makes a valid point. He makes many valid points. So what's your recommendation on how in the future something like this doesn't happen? So if another dog attacks another dog, that maybe somebody get their money back.
I can't give legal advice to residents, but what I can tell you is,
Well, I'm asking ordinance wise.
yeah, so I think the safety committee looked at this issue, and maybe Councilmember Wolf can tell you if they decided to take action or not. But as you'll recall, we did send this to that committee to decide whether we were going to bring action forward, and I haven't been advised that we're doing it at this time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, again, I feel very weird speaking for Mr. Corbin, but I mean, I think that after he spoke at that meeting, you were there. It was, that would be one option to us, is to declare a certain breed of dog a vicious. That gets dicey. What if it's half pit? What if it's 3/4? The size thing really doesn't work. I have 200-pound dogs that are
Right.
afraid
But
of.
do you
kittens.
carry insurance on them?
Do I carry insurance on my dogs?
Mhm.
My homeowner's policy
Yeah,
covers.
and
Um, you know, I think there are villages certainly that have things like that in place, but well, I would actually say more like cities that do that also have, you know, a little more revenue stream and wherewithal and everything to enforce it. All I heard him say over and over that night, it wasn't
I
the
was,
answer
yeah,
that any of us
I
wanted
was
to hear.
there, so
It
yeah.
was a civil matter that
Mhm.
if same way if I walked across the street and punched my neighbor in the nose, you know, that it was a civil matter and if things that we tried to put in place might be difficult to enforce.
Right.
Steve, if I recollect correctly, and Chris, you can chime in too, wasn't it said that if we have ordinances, then we have to catch the dog, we have to kennel the dog,
And we would have to invest in the,
right?
And understanding that, I kind of changed my position on that,
Yeah,
in saying that an insurance policy is, you know, at least something we could do. Like I said, I'm lucky enough that I could afford to, as painful as it is, I could afford to, you know, push on with this cost. I think about my elderly mother-in-law whose dog, you know, who recently passed, but for years that was her only companion. And she's on a very, very fixed income. And if something like this happened to her dog, the only option she would have had was to put the dog down and never recover anything from it.
I'd be glad to look at, because for some reason I may be really wrong on this, that maybe Maysville, Kentucky has a vicious dog ordinance, and there's probably other places. And
I think theirs was breed specific, which I personally have a huge problem with.
they banned
It's like
a certain breed
racist.
from the
Okay.
community.
I'll do it with you and cooperation with you. You can look, I can look, we can compare notes,
Right.
whatever, however you want to do it, and be glad to look at other villages that have put some things
Right.
like that in place, or maybe ones that we're considering but didn't, or ones that actually did and why they did.
Right.
And actually we could maybe kind of revisit that again in the emergency services and say, you know, hey, I called up 20 places that did it and they thought it was worth
I
it.
think that's where, I mean, we could talk a lot tonight, but probably not come to a conclusion. I think it probably needs to be delved down a little bit deeper at the committee, not to bury it, but
But
to
that's an
try to-
avenue. He brings a new
Yeah.
avenue
Yeah.
to it that we didn't really discuss at the ESC, which is
Yeah.
possible insurance requirement. I'd be glad to look into that for sure.
Yeah, and you know, it's just I feel like I was wronged, and I feel now, especially knowing what I know now about the situation, that I have absolutely no resource. You know, before it was a civil matter, and now it's going to cost me another couple $1,000s to never get anything if I want to go that route. So,
Chris, and just to follow up on Steve saying, that meeting, we have one scheduled for the 11th of April.
okay,
Now, that doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen between then and now,
Right.
but like, mark your calendar if you
Okay.
want to attend, it's going to be where we can hash things out. Yeah.
Okay.
What time is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mark. It is 4:30.
Okay, why would we have to kennel them? Why wouldn't we use the,
Because it's our ordinance that we have to enforce. We can't
even if
employ.
it's a state?
I think, Chief, you were there at that meeting too, weren't you? Weren't there some discussion about what the responsibilities would be as who needs to catch that dog and who needs to shelter it until it maybe could go out to?
I mean, if we arrest somebody, we don't have to put them in our own jail. We use the county jail. Why would we use the county?
How they would be willing to work with us on that, just like we have to sign a contract with the jail. currently.
Yeah.
We Probably
That's
have to do
what
the same with them.
We use
Yeah,
county
and-
resources all the time.
and again, I'm you know, because of cost and because of resources and things like that, I'm pushing more now for an insurance policy rather than a confiscation.
That's what I'm hearing. So the kennel thing, none of that would even,
I'm
for what,
just asking for mine.
Right.
okay, but for what he's proposing, I think we kind of turned the corner on that. And it's like, can we maybe make something to where if you have what the village defines as a vicious dog, you'd be required to have insurance
Right.
and register that insurance. And then they and they see that this person has this kind of dog, but they don't have it registered, and they could go out and cite them accordingly.
Right.
Right. I want to make sure I'm understanding what
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I'm
and-
researching here. Okay.
Mhm.
Do we have a leash law? I'm sorry.
May I speak? Steve, you and I disagree on a lot of stuff. Right now, you're making a lot of sense.
Do we have a leash law? in
That
this
scares me.
town?
There's a leash law across the state, I believe.
And if you catch somebody, that's the dog warden, not the police.
I mean, if they're not available, we can handle it, yeah.
So did this guy with this dog?
The
do you know if he
warden
was
handled,
cited?
yeah, he was cited and the
Okay.
warden handled all that, so.
Okay, but that's, I just wonder if there's some way we could also maybe advertise a little more because people don't tend to think of state or county.
Not to put anything down, but didn't Tracy Hawkins say that vicious dog attacks in Brown County were like 3 or 4 or 5 last year or something? It was something less than what you thought there would be.
It
But that
was,
doesn't lessen the effect.
yeah, it was quite low, but
You or your puppy, you're upset.
That weighed into the conversation though about, I mean, it's not to sound, I am a dog lover, if you know me. so
I've been on your
I feel
Facebook, yeah.
for you. But that weighed into some of the, how much do we invest? And again, I think me and you are past kind of turning the corner on that. But as far as back to Councilperson Montgomery's point, as far as if we had to have a kennel or the manpower and resources for something that statistically happen maybe 3 times a year,
Mhm.
pretty bad if you're one of the 3.
Right.
But I like the new kind of route that you're taking about possibly, and I'm not saying I'm for or against it. I want to research it and
Right.
see the pros and cons of it or whatever. But and I'll do that between now and that ESC meeting. I'll try to reach out to some towns that have done that and find out the good, the bad, and the ugly, or whatever. And
right.
we'll-
It's just, I'm to the point now that this is something that just keeps coming up because every step forward I take, there's another block.
Yeah.
And, I've exhausted my resources.
Know that just coming and talking about it again, I don't feel like you're wasting. It does raise awareness. We have a lot of people there's a lot of people here tonight and a lot of people that watch online.
Yeah.
But
And to
it's good to
those,
keep the conversation going. I guess.
right. And to those in the community, if you own a dog that, is a big enough dog to hurt somebody, consider getting insurance because, it will come back to in a civil matter in most cases. It's just my case is a little different that it's not financially feasible in my case. So.
But if someone has a dog that's been attacked, I think most insurance carriers don't want to insure that dog anymore. So it's almost like they say, get rid of the dog.
Right.
But yeah, it's a good thought there. All right.
Chris, do you have his phone number?
I know how to contact them.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
We've talked.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Corsi. We had some others over here wish to talk. Tom Mays, you're here. Do you wish to address council? No. Okay. Delbert, we asked you, sir. Kenny Lyman, do you wish to address council? Okay. All right. John Paul, do you wish to address council?
Not at this time.
Okay. Ma'am, do you wish to address council? Liz Dunn. Sorry, I started to call you McKinley. I'm sorry.
I did that.
I've been married 18 years. I don't know how long it takes, but
Another 18 maybe.
Yes, it's something over 18 years. I know that, right? So my name is Liz Dunn, and I'm here today to give a quick update on the Board of Zoning Appeals. I know I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to zoom through this. So we have zoning in place here in the village, and as part of our zoning ordinance, we have a Board of Zoning Appeals, which is the mechanism by which if someone puts in a permit, requests a permit from the village for to build something, to open something, to do whatever, if the zoning ordinance does not allow for that to be done, those people can appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and that's where I sit. That's a 5-member board, and we really only hear maybe 1 or 2 appeals a year, not very many. They're usually minor things like somebody wants to put a shed in their backyard and it's not far enough off the property line. Usually they're very inconsequential kinds of things. But I do want to make the public aware of what is going on in the north end of town. And now that this has made it through the Board of Zoning Appeals and all of it is set in stone and nothing can be changed, I feel like now I can say what I want to say. So the old Meadowood Nursing Home, I'm going to refer to it as the old Meadowood Nursing Home, although it has not been operational since about 2006. But Meadowood Nursing Home sits at the end of Stevens Avenue at the north end of town. Stevens Avenue is a dead end road. It turns onto Kenwood Avenue, but then Kenwood dead end. So it's essentially all a dead end back in there. Of course, that nursing home was built way before zoning was ever in place here, so on and so forth. It has sat vacant for a long time. It has been purchased by an investor, and that investor is out of Cincinnati, and they are in the process of constructing 64, get that number in your head, 64 apartments in that location. So that will be the largest apartment complex inside the village of Georgetown. We don't have any apartment complexes that are that big. We were able to put some restrictions on them in the zoning board of appeals hearing. We did put a restriction of 2 heads per bed. So these are allegedly going to be 1-bedroom apartments with, there's some nuances there, but basically 1-bedroom apartments. Anyway, long story short, there are 2 apartments that are going to be 2 bedrooms, which gives them up to 4 people in those. So that's 132 residents that are going to be living at the end of Stevens Avenue, which is a dead end road. Just get that in your head. We've never even graduated a high school class from Georgetown High School that's that big. It's about 30% bigger than that. So just for frame of reference, I just want you to know how many people are going to be living at the end of this dead end street. Now, this is a street that isn't a 2-lane road. The infrastructure doesn't support the kind of traffic that's going to happen back there. So that's going to cost the village, because at some point, the infrastructure is going to break down completely, and the village is going to have to do something about the road. What that's going to be, I have no idea. I'm not an expert on that, but something's going to have to be done. But the really good news for all the village residents is that this property is part of the CRA that was approved in October by this council, and that gives the owners of this building a 15-year tax abatement before we're going to see an increase in property taxes on that piece of property. Now, you can imagine the property taxes right now on that are really low because that's been a vacant building for a long time. So the property valuation is very, very low right now, and they get to remain at that rate for the next 15 years. So we are going to see no increase to the property taxes that we take in. We're going to see no increased revenue or funding of any kind. We are going to have to service them for police, fire, EMS, all of those things that you would service any village resident for. And Mr. Bill Brisbane, who's the owner of this property, is probably laughing all the way to the bank, if I'm guessing, okay? Because why not be able to pay so little in property taxes? My understanding of the CRA is that it was put in place to try to entice businesses to come into the village, and I can understand that. But at this point, it hasn't done that. It's not enticing any businesses. It's only enticing this guy to pat his pockets at the expense of all of us, because I pay 10 mills to the fire and EMS levy, which I gladly voted in favor of, but I had hoped that maybe all of the people using those services would be paying the 10 mills as well. Guess that's not how it's going to work. Mr. Brisbane and Mr. Tassel is a 10% owner in this project. Mr. Brisbane's a 90% owner, but of course, Mr. Brisbane didn't show his face at the hearing because he's not going to do that. He sent Mr. Tassel to be his henchman. And so I pelted him with a whole lot of questions, and he tried to tell us that it was going to be a senior housing complex. Now, here's what you have to understand, and I'm running out of time. A senior housing complex is designated only as they see fit, because
30 seconds, Liz.
they don't have any available funding for that. It's not going through HUD. It's not going through USDA. So it will probably not be senior housing, just FYI. I hope I'm wrong on that.
Chris, can I pause you real quick? Can I make a motion to extend Liz Dunn's time?
Yeah, I second that.
Thank you. So I think you need to understand.
Time. I mean, let's have a definite time frame.
Give me another 10 minutes.
Another 5.
10 minutes and I'll be out of your hair.
Okay.
I can talk really fast. So there's no government subsidy. There's no vouchers being accepted here. Okay. So while the owners can say that they're going to rent to senior citizens, and I hope they do, I really, truly hope that that's the case. Understand that legally there's nothing holding them to that. Okay. So you could have 132 residents living at the north end of town, and there couldn't be a single senior citizen in the whole place. There would be nothing we could do about it. They let us know in the meeting, and this is something that I do have a problem with, and I'm not afraid to say it publicly. The owner of the property, the buyer of that property, told us in the zoning board of appeals meeting that he found out about this property when he was at, I'm going to call it like a developers convention. I don't know what the official name of it was, but it was a convention of developers that go in and look for properties. I get it. Okay, fine. He found out about it there because our village, our mayor and our village administrator were there touting this property along with a few others. It wasn't just this one, but this was a privately owned property. It was on the market, listed with the MLS with two very experienced and very capable real estate agents that I have no doubt in the world could have sold this property. But we as a village were paying to have this property marketed to developers, knowing that it didn't meet the zoning requirement that was already in place. I want you to understand that. That property was zoned R2, which does not allow for multifamily housing. But our village was out there touting this piece of property to developers to come in here and put a multifamily housing unit in, knowing it didn't meet the zoning code.
Never done.
Then Mr. Tassel lied to us under oath.
That may be true. It was never promoted as to sell for multi-purpose use. It was a piece of property that could be developed for any usage.
It could not be developed for any usage
Well,
because it was
in the
zoned
zone-
R2.
In the zoning thing, we showed properties that are around the village of Georgetown that could be developed, not anything for specific usage.
So if I have a large piece of property that I want to sell, do I just come up here to the village and ask them to market it for me? Is that what we're doing now?
If it could be desirable for the village to benefit from it, yeah, we'd be glad to help you do that.
Well, the village doesn't benefit from this. They got a 15-year tax abatement. Where's the benefit in that?
I'll answer at the end of your time where I think it is. but-
Yeah. So for what it's worth, here's the deal. In 5 years, I want to stand up here and tell you I was wrong. I do. I really, truly want to be able to stand here and say, I was wrong on that. I missed the mark. It's all senior housing and it's wonderful. I would love that. I would love for that to be the case. But I'm here to tell you right now, I have researched Mr. Brisbane in depth for a month and a half. And I can tell you all the evidence points to the fact that that's not what's going to happen here. And he wouldn't have found out about this property unless it was brought to his attention at that convention or whatever it was. The entire process was backwards, in my opinion. It should have been rezoned or a variance should have been given or something before the property was ever sold. Like the fact that these people bought this property and our zoning prevented what they wanted to do and they just went ahead and started building. They literally started building before they ever even had a permit. They still don't have a permit, actually. Because it was just because we're just going to not worry about the zoning. We don't care about the zoning. It doesn't really matter. So that brings me to my very last point. My last point is this. I think one of two things needs to happen. I think council either needs to agree to invest a significant amount of time in rewriting and updating the zoning ordinance, or it needs to be abolished. And the reason for that is that as it's written right now, it gives people a very false sense of security. If I lived on Stevens Avenue, or I lived on Depot Circle, or I lived on Wall Street, and I had just bought a house within the last year, and my real estate agent showed me this house, and they said, don't worry. And I said, well, what's wrong with that property back there? And they said, oh, don't worry. It's zoned R2. It'll never be multifamily. Don't worry about it. And you bought a house, and now you have 132 neighbors moving into your backyard. You'd be ticked off. Anybody would.
If your real estate agent told you that, they would have been lying.
That it was zoned R2?
Because it's R2
Right.
with revision for conditional variances, which means it could always be, even if the village
Fair
administrator
enough.
and the mayor went to a meeting and he's saying they didn't and said, this is potential commercial property, they wouldn't have been lying. Because there is a caveat in there that says that it can be granted a conditional exemption.
Right.
So I don't mean to derail you, but.
Agreed. I agree with you on that. No, you're right. Factually, that's true. I agree with you on that. But I think that having the zoning in place gives people a false sense of security. I have some assurance based on the zoning ordinance that I probably am not going to have a gas station built next door to me. These people probably maybe thought the same thing. Is what I'm telling you. So I think either the zoning ordinance needs to be looked at really heavily, revised, rewritten, updated, whatever, or it needs to be abolished because it's not serving a purpose right now that does anything to improve the lives of the current people within this village. So.
Can I rebuttal first? And I'd like to
Sure.
start with what I agree with you on.
Yeah.
I think that the zoning ordinance, first off, for everybody in the room, or everybody watching doesn't know, we serve on that committee together.
Mhm.
And tons of respect for you. Liz is our chairperson and our brains, I think.
No.
Yeah.
That's setting the bar pretty low. Thank you.
I think it needs to be rewritten. Everybody on that committee thinks it needs to be rewritten.
It does.
The person who enforces it, Mike Click, has asked for it to be rewritten. And I would dare say probably all 6 people on council would like to see it rewritten. It was the first draft of it. I didn't help write it. And then as you write a new document and you live with it for a few years, you start figuring out mistakes for it. So common ground there.
Right.
Completely agree. For the specifics of this case, I don't want to like debate it at all, but there's just a few things that you're saying that they're not a lie. They're first off, they did start building that without a permit. Agree. Then they came and self-reported themselves and said,
Because if they didn't,
it's
they were
come
going
to-
to get turned
they
in.
should have done they should have done the homework or whatever. And they said, we understand that we're supposed to have this permit. What do we need to do?
Right.
Okay.
Fair enough. Mhm.
When they came and asked for a conditional variance, six people, five people heard that
Mhm.
and made a decision to
Sure.
grant it. Now, sitting up there with the rest of you all sitting right up there and
Mhm.
hearing that, one thing, I was very torn on this case,
Right.
very, very torn on this
Right.
case.
And I can
Um,
appreciate that.
one-
I'm not insinuating it was an easy decision.
No, it definitely wasn't. And one thing that kept ringing in my head, just as a council person, is the weeks after weeks after weeks of council meetings that we have people come in here and talk about, we need to grow this community. What are you doing to grow the community? What are you doing to grow the community? When you say that the village will get nothing out of that for 15 years because they don't have to pay property taxes, I disagree. If you own a restaurant and 60 new people are moving into your town, that might help Mr. Mays or Mr. Highlander or whatever.
Sure.
But because that property owner is not paying property taxes, 60 people moving into that town could be a huge influx of income for every single service business in this town. So I think that's an inaccurate statement. The most valid point that I think you've made is that the infrastructure doesn't support back there. I can't argue with you on that. But if we're going to grow the town and people want to have new business and stuff like that, then we're going to have that problem commonly as we grow the town. We're going to. And I'll just close because it bears repeating. I said it before. It was not a misrepresentation of that property. If I'm going to go buy a property around that, let me say something else. Now that I said that was my last thing, and I've said like 4 more things. Be aware, everybody that's listening to this, that every single person that has property adjoining that property was sent a letter to.
Found out. I have a list of 6 people that were not notified.
Okay.
But you weren't aware of that before tonight. Fair enough.
It wasn't a lie. It was.
Right. As far as we were told, everyone was
Yeah,
notified. I now have evidence that that's
They're
not-
supposed to be notified.
they were
Okay.
not. Right.
So there were 6 that weren't, but how many that were?
I think 6 maybe also that were or
Okay.
something.
Okay. Was it published in the paper?
So our zoning ordinance requires it to be published in the paper, but it also requires all adjacent property owners to be notified by mail, and they were not.
Okay. Some of the adjacent property owners were notified by mail, more than one.
Right.
It was in the paper.
Mhm.
It was on our village website. And
Okay.
for anybody to come and express dissension about it being there,
Right.
one person came and didn't really full-blown express dissension, just said, I've just got some questions about what they're
Mhm.
building back there.
Right.
So,
She was a wealth of knowledge. She
Big
was.
time.
She was a citizen that really
Big
helped us
time.
out. Yeah.
but now I'll close on,
Mhm.
it's not a misrepresentation for Art Owens or Dale Cowell or anybody to be somewhere and saying, this is a property that somebody could potentially market. Even if if Mayor Cowell says they didn't, then I guess they didn't. But even if they did say this could potentially be a business for somebody, that's not an inaccurate statement by our zoning code. But thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just, Liz, I just wanted to add one thing.
Yeah.
I think you make a good point about the zoning code, and Councilmember Wolf as well. Art's not here tonight, as you're aware, our administrator. He wanted me to let you know that he has already reached out to Ann McBride of McBride, Dale, and Clarion,
Good.
who specializes in this very thing, which is after a code has kind of matured,
Mhm.
they come in and look at it.
That's great. That's
and
what it
so
means.
he's preparing to get a bid, or has requested a bid to do that. The other thing I would point out, though, is that the village, although it's a property tax abatement, I think one of the things that you might not be aware of, or the public might not be aware of, is the village receives significant income from utilities, from every single one of those units, tapping into our sewer, our water, our electric lines.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that I wanted to point out is that you may not be aware, but the village actually has a full-time economic development individual that we contract with and pay a monthly
Ham-
fee to,
Yeah, Jason.
who routinely markets properties
Right.
in the village. Some of the largest employers now that have recently located to the village
Mhm.
wouldn't be here but for us marketing that land. So I do think it is not uncommon. It's certainly within our purview to do that. And I would go so far as to say if there is somebody that wants their land marketed, the village can do that, in the sense that we can notify Ready Cincinnati and they look for shovel-ready land to do projects. That doesn't mean, though, that we automatically will open our doors to anybody that wants to locate there because of our zoning code.
Mhm.
But I do want to, and I know it was brought up, and I know you're aware as chair of that committee, that multifamily is a permitted use on R2 land. The only land that
But it's no more than 3 units. We can, our
anything
zone,
more
than 3 units.
is
right.
permitted, but only with a conditional use.
Only with conditional.
So I would say that if I lived on property that was adjacent to R2, I should expect that an apartment development could be there unless I'm zoned R1. So that is something to keep in mind. And perhaps in that rewrite that Ann McBride does, we can either create additional requirements such as, for multifamily to be in an R2, or we can create its own district. So those are some things that we could do. And so I would encourage, if the village does end up using McBride Dale Clarion, part of the package that they put together, because they just got done doing this in the city of Springdale, they do both online feedback from residents. So it allows residents to provide feedback
Good.
online, and they do in-person charrettes where you can come in and kind of say,
Yeah.
here's what we could do. So if that package comes before council, both those should be a part of that.
This is another clarification. Art Owens and I were invited by the Cincinnati Area Home Builders Association to come down and talk to them about the virtues of what can happen in the village of Georgetown. And we specifically said, here's these lands available. We didn't say, here's the former Meadowood Nursing Home, put a multi-unit development there. So we met with probably about 15 different home builders there. We want our village to grow.
Right.
The thing that happens in these small villages is they slowly die off. And unless you have jobs here that pay benefits and decent wages, people will leave. You see that, Liz? I've seen it. Some of our brightest students, they graduate from this high school, they leave, they don't come back. I want them to want to stay here. So, and the only way you can do that is to have the community to grow. So that's what was being promoted. So don't think that I was selling this village out from underneath people.
Well, I don't see how 64 is senior, if it truly is senior housing, which is debatable, but if we're going on that premise that it's senior housing, I don't understand how 64 senior housing units, those are people that are not likely employees. If you're a business looking to come into an area, you're not looking to hire 70-year-olds because they're not going to work for very long. Like, that's not in this isn't going to provide any jobs. I mean, we actually did ask them in the committee or in the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting if they were going to provide any jobs. They did say that they probably would have a maintenance person. Fair enough. They're going to hire a maintenance person and maybe 1 or 2 other positions, but it's not going to create a ton of jobs. It's not bringing in a workforce of people for other businesses to want to hire from. Like, that's not what's being accomplished. I can understand wanting to improve the village. Believe me, I can understand wanting to improve the village. But if we're talking about truly improving the village, we have to talk about what does that and what does or doesn't.
We did not solicit them to come to buy that piece of property. We had nothing to do with the buy or sell of that
Right,
property.
I understand that.
So we can't control that. Would
Right.
I've much rather had, multi-million-dollar homes there and people that are CEOs of IBM and General Motors there?
Who
Of
wouldn't,
course I
right?
would.
Right, of course.
But
I get it.
also, we want to have restaurants and you have to have head counts to make those things
Mm-hmm.
work. So the more heads you have in this village, the more viable some of those businesses can be. Whether it's Tony Applegate's store selling a hammer, whether it's McDonald's selling a few hamburgers, whether it's Mark selling some ice cream at UDF. So the more people you have in there, the more critical mass you have towards achieving something that can then propel the next thing to happen.
And I understand that, but I think you and I can both agree that the next level of population that we would have to get to here to entice some of those larger, because I get it, you have to have a footprint, you have to have X number of people with an X number with X radius, okay? But if you're talking about larger businesses, we are so far from that mark that 132 people isn't going to be a drop in the bucket. But they are going to utilize fire and EMS and police, and we're not going to see the revenue that helps propel those services. So Sorry, Matt.
We've heard 62 electrical taps and sewer taps and,
Well, he
and,
did-
and monthly bills being paid. And
then I would ask the council that when that happens, don't give him a break on it. Because he's going to come in here and ask for it. He's a developer. He's not stupid. He's going to come in here and say, I want 64 water taps. Can you charge me for 30? Don't give it to him. You're giving him 15.
Don't speak for him, Liz. Let him, if he wishes to do that, let him come and do that. That's
He's-
his job, not,
Okay,
not
that's
yours.
that's fair. Let him. Okay.
Yeah,
May I-
okay.
May I ask a
Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
So, Liz, I want to say before I ask this question,
Yeah.
this is 110% not in attack mode.
No,
I'm just a
I
guy who was
understand.
not in that meeting in the first
Right.
place.
No, I-
And I bet you've got a real good answer. I just don't see it.
Sure. Sure.
So my understanding is that a variance or something was granted for these people by the
Conditional
zoning
use
board,
permit.
right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm assuming you guys voted on
We
that?
did. That's true.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my question to you, and this is not a weird question, I'm
Yeah,
trying to understand.
right.
What's the thing that you're seeing that's
Mhm.
saying that vote, I'm not gonna say wasn't valid, but like should be rethought?
Right,
Like, why,
right.
because like I look to the zoning board as, like, you guys know what you're talking about, I don't. I'm gonna trust that vote,
Right.
but I should not trust that vote because,
So I'm not indicating that the vote shouldn't be trusted. So
Okay,
the
okay.
vote is what it is. Nothing I say here is going to change anything. This is not going to change the outcome of any of this. And that's not the goal for tonight because it can't even do that. That's not even the mechanism by which that can happen. What has been decided and already voted on is done. It's set in stone. This will come in. These people will move here. And we will all then have to contend with whatever comes out of that. I'm really hopeful it'll be nothing.
or enjoy what positive comes out.
And
of
I
it.
hope
That's-
you're
that's-
right. I do. I hope you're right. I think you know that I have my doubts about that, but I hope you're right. I really do.
I mean, it would be not the
because I'm not going to move. I'm going to live here regardless. So I'd like to live in a place where the positive comes.
those are ADA equipped facilities. Okay, I have a loved one that might be able to move back home and be there. So I take it a little, that it's just going to be a stain and a problem and everything like that. That's just a very pessimistic way to look at taking an empty nursing home that's sat back there for years at the end of a dead end street and it's just not going to be a good thing.
If this-
and they're going to come in here and ask for discounts, and it's just going to be a blight. And
If
it's-
this was a different developer, I would have a different outlook. I can tell you that.
well, I'm very scared about publicly smearing the developer.
Which is
I mean,
why,
it's-
which is why I didn't say any of this before a vote was taken. That's why I didn't come to last council
Saying it
meeting
now,
because
I
this
mean.
hadn't been voted on yet, and I didn't want to be seen as influencing that vote, other than my position on that board, which is why I was very cautious about not coming here beforehand. But now that the vote has been taken, it's all set in stone. It's all moving forward. I can say this is the information that I have obtained. It's public record. I mean, there's nothing slanderous about it. And I have major concerns about it. That's my position on it.
Good people can disagree. I'm
Sure. absolutely, fair
happy.
enough.
I'm very happy personally if our economic developer and our village administrator, our mayor are getting out of the city limits and going places and trying to find things to do with our vacant properties and things like that. Kudos to you guys for doing that.
just to really quick summarize then?
Yeah.
Your message, your takeaway that you want us to have here
Right.
is, this is happening.
Right.
You would recommend we proceed with caution.
I would.
That's all.
And I really just wanted it to be a public record. I just
Okay.
wanted a chance to put it on the record, make the residents aware, because I don't think a lot of them are. And that's fair. I understand people don't have time to dig into this. I get it. I mean,
And that we need to look at the zoning code. We did.
and we do. We really do need to look at the
Yes.
zoning code.
We
And I
all agree
think
on
that's, if that's all that comes out of this, then I'll chalk it up as a success, I guess, because it needs to be looked at. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Let's see, John Paul, do you wish to address council?
I'll pass this time.
Okay, ma'am, we've asked, do you wish to go? Jeremy Jones, do you wish to address council?
So I haven't been here in a while. My name is Jeremy Jones. I ran for council in the last election. The biggest thing that when I ran and I talked to all these folks out here was communication. And by reading Facebook and watching Facebook, I realized that the Facebook meetings were not going to be live streamed. It's going to go to YouTube, which is fine. It's just another streaming service. But you can't really comment on YouTube. So there's no keeping up with the public and their comments or questions. And as I ran for council, I was running to be a voice for the community, which all of you are a voice of the community, or supposed to be anyway. But how can you be a voice for the community or listen to the community or see what their voices are if you can't read the comments in a meeting, or because there's folks that work and they can't make it here. There's older senior citizens that, well, they can't get out. And so there's all these other issues and problems that, our village faces, as we've just heard. Our zoning is a mess. Well, I've tried to read it. It is a mess. But we're not helping our community know what we're about because we're trying to, well, in my opinion, you're just trying to hide it, what's going on. We're not sharing the YouTube link for people to see the meeting. You're talking to a community of, 90% senior people. This is a retirement village is what it ultimately is. There's very few younger people that stay here. Everybody leaves because, well, Eastgate's more appealing because there's more stuff in a shorter amount of distance. I get we're trying to work on that and develop this area, and I get all that, and I'm all for it. Unfortunately, it's not working, whatever is happening. And I'm just looking for something to come about where we can get back to Facebook. People can make their comments. It seemed like there was a problem when people make comments that people just didn't want to read their comments or didn't want to hear that from people. Well, guess what? You're going to hear a bunch of negative from these folks, unfortunately. You're supposed to be their voice. You're going to hear good things. You're going to hear bad things. You're going to agree. You're going to disagree. You are a politician. You are sitting at the table to make our village better. You're not. You're really not. I've never ran for public government, never been a part of it, never really wanted it until the last time when I saw all of this, and I continue to see nonsense still. Several folks ran on being a fiscal conservative, but yet we are going to spend ourselves until we have no money. That's the truth. Let's bring a Port Authority in. Let's spend some money on that. Let's do a DORA. I've talked to so many people. Nobody wants that garbage. You want a DORA? Yes, sir. You want a DORA? There's Ripley. Now, this nice flower shop lady over next door here actually moved from Ripley to come up here because the DORA was affecting her business, and she got out. And so I was sitting in a CIC meeting when she came and she spilled all of that information. So if you'd like to know the truth and think that I'm lying, you can ask her yourself if you'd like. But that was what she came in the premise of wanting to come to Georgetown was to get away from the DORA affecting her business. And again, my name is Jeremy Jones, and I will be running for council in this next election.
I like that. Yeah, you brought up a few different points there, but as you brought, I can't say this enough. I would just like to remind you, you keep saying this council doesn't want the comments on. I have said repeatedly that I want the comments on. He has said he wants the comments on. I gave out my email address at the last meeting. I gave out my phone number. It's like, I want to hear, we've been trying to talk for a week. I've been very busy. Sorry I haven't got with you, but that's not an accurate statement that this council does not want the comments on.
Majority of the council doesn't want it. Okay, it was voted last time 4-2. You guys lost, right? So me saying they, I mean, if you keep it in the context in which it is, and the comment that I put on Facebook was, I named Montgomery, Mark, Jeremy, Kelly, right? And keep it in that context.
I know what you
right.
know, and I know what you believe. I just don't want anybody else.
No, I know, and I understand that. So for clarity,
if you do get on council one day, I think you'll find you can have the greatest ideas in the world. And if 5 people vote against you, it's going to be weird for you to have me come up there and say, you were looking at me the whole time you talked.
Right.
And so I just want to make that clarification. Okay.
Yeah, so for clarification, Steve and Mike didn't vote for it. They would like the comments on, but for everybody else, they did.
Any other comments? I like that we live stream our meetings, and the comments are appreciated, but we can't have just continuous comments all through our meetings, or we'd be here until midnight every night. So we have to be judicious in how we look at those and screen them to the ones that we feel are most important.
Here's something to think about real quick on comments. And there's a difference between having comments streaming clear through the meeting and then what ones can we read, I think is what you're talking about to take up time. But I'll reference a great, 2 weeks ago at a council meeting, Captain Staggs gets up and relays a story about how the police department had worked very hard and took a really dangerous person off our streets. And all 6 council people up here said, thank you. I mean, it was like heartfelt. Thank you. Thank you. And the 2 or 3 people in the audience said, thank you. If we would have had our comments turned on that night, there would have been 500 thank yous rolling up the thing. And Matt Staggs and the rest of his crew could have all known that their efforts were appreciated. So when I hear other council people talk about turning off social media because the toxicity of it, okay, yeah, that might be one part of it, but what about that kind of thing that didn't get to get here that night? So I would ask everybody. I mean, this issue's dead, I guess, for now. They're turned off, but maybe we can reconsider that at some point and figure out. I know there's some work underway to go ahead. I see you nodding your head. There's some things maybe in queue to bring back some comments in some kind of organized fashion or something like that. But that's just a thought that I had between that meeting and this one. Is we're also shutting off some very, very positive comments when we do that.
Definitely. One of the things, first of all, there was a ad hoc committee that was created a couple of months ago before all of them, probably 4 months ago, before all of this started, to explore this topic. And one of the things that came from that meeting was going to YouTube, of course, to kind of give a means for everybody to actually see the meetings, because if you're not on Facebook, you don't get to view the meetings. But I mean, even since going to YouTube, the issue is not dead. It's just a matter of finding the best way to do it. I know right after the meeting, we had talked about, after the last meeting, I had found the app that I use in my everyday environment, my work environment, that is basically a QR code, because I had told you guys about it before. And I did some homework to find it. It's a QR code that we could tag to the meetings and allows people to scan or type a code, and they're able to put their questions or comments in that, and it goes to one person that can be filtered through that way and read. It's a very good, we use it for live meetings that we're doing digitally, and there's 1,000 people in the meeting and somebody has a question, they go through the app to put their question in, so not everybody's like raising their hands and talking during the meeting. So it's a very filtered way of being able to, filtered and organized, I guess you can say, of being able to gather the comments and being able to keep them real time and keep them, alive during the meeting. It's just, I think the wrong idea is out there. It's not a dead subject. It's something that we're trying to figure out what is the best approach. Because one of the biggest things, I personally, I said this to somebody on here about, somebody said something about the comments from the last meeting on Facebook. I personally don't read them. I'm on Facebook. For better or worse, I don't read them because there's just too much of bashing, and I don't care if you bash me, it doesn't matter. It's the bashing, though. It's too much negativity. It's not really about the facts. You know, Nancy brought this up earlier. If somebody would say, I dislike Dora because XYZ, that's fantastic. But instead you get, oh, Nancy Montgomery, this is just her agenda. That's what she wants. Or Jeremy, you know, trying to put like, it's not factual to the topic. It's a bashing the person. Let's talk about the topic. I want to see those. So I'm really not interested in the people bashing. And I also am not interested in seeing our community bashed on Facebook, because one of the realities that I think people don't think about is that as we're working our butts off, as you heard our mayor and our administrator out there trying to get new businesses to our community, and there's a lot of real things going on that are happening behind the scenes that could be huge for this community. But as those things are happening, I live and breathe in the business world and have done that for 25 years. These business owners are going to look at your communities on Facebook. They're going to get out there and look at the pages. They're going to look at business pages on Facebook, anything that they can get their hands on to really do a deep dive into that community. And if you don't think that happens, it does happen. And I mean, that's a smart business owner. They're going to do all the fact finding that they can do before they move into our community and make a big decision. So if we're out there putting some, in a lot of cases, not true comments on Facebook. And I've seen a lot of them that aren't true, that are just, it's false information. We're only hurting ourselves. We're hurting ourselves. We're holding ourselves back. If you want to bash me personally on Facebook, I don't care. Do it all day long. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to pout, whine, whatever. I want to put something out there that actually showcases our community and actually attracts people to come. I don't want all this bashing out there and one business owner looks at it and says, you know what, that's a bad zone. That's a, maybe I better not step into that.
I agree with most of what you're saying. I don't think there's ever been an incident ever where somebody said, I might build my factory in Georgetown and I might build it over here in Timbuktu. And I looked at both their Facebook pages and over here in Georgetown, they got some really nasty comments going on their face. So I think I'm going to go this way. I think their decisions are driven by different criteria than that.
I got a message from a businessman and I think he's out.
I was going to come here, but I watched some comments on your council meeting and I changed my mind.
He was going to come here, but he said after Mike and I talked about it, and he's from here originally, so he has a tie. When I was watching the meeting, I have no clue. But he has a couple of businesses, but one in particular that he has opened a second location. And he's looking at opening 2 to 4 more in the next 2 years. And he said, anybody who thinks as a businessman, especially with a retail service, not a big business, that business people don't go out and look at village pages and look at, what kind of environment there is and what kind of, he said they're crazy. He said, I do it all the time. And I'm not going to go somewhere that not only are they bashing the village or whatever, but when there's just negative remarks, because then you get those on your business page. And that is a killer for a small business. So, no, it may not be a plant. No, it may, but do understand, yeah, it does happen.
And another prime example of that too, and let's take it away from the business arena. Let's say we were looking to hire a new solicitor and Joe Brown was our prime candidate and he's awesome and fantastic and he has all these great reviews and we really, really, really want him. And then we go and we interview with him and he says, you know what, he comes back to the table and says, you know what, I don't think I want that job in Georgetown, Ohio. Little did we know he went to Facebook and was looking at all the drama and the different things on Facebook.
You mean like what the next candidate for police chief might say?
Right. I mean, it's a very real thing. I mean, it's absolutely real.
If we're going to be worried about what people, what potential businesses think about the comments that are fed in Facebook, we ought to be probably more concerned about our own behavior among the 6 of us.
Well, and that's the other thing. Absolutely. I mean, that's 100% the other thing behind it as well. Go right ahead.
Mark has a comment, and then we need to kind of move around the rest of these people. Okay, after Mark. So Mark, if you would, please.
We're in the public forum session of this meeting. If anyone leaves, I've got a lot of stuff to say during my round table, so you might want to tune in if you leave.
I think one of our basic problems is we disagree the purpose of the Facebook. When we started doing the Facebook, it was for transparency. It was to give information, which is what most places do. And that's why we did it. You know, if somebody said, oh, they're hiding things. Well, no, not when you tell them, not when you live stream them. No, there's no hiding. But that's the way I always saw it, was information.
It was your idea, by the way.
Well, it wasn't just mine. Art had already thought about it. Andy and I talked about it. So no, but I believe in transparency. I always wanted from day one to do all the committee meetings. Not everybody wanted to do that. Okay. But it's informational. That's the way I see it. People have plenty of ways to comment. You know, they can comment on their own pages. They can start their own page. They can come here tonight and talk. They can, but to me, the reason I wanted them live streamed is because I didn't want people to feel like they had to work all day and then come out to a meeting. Or if it was hard for them to come to a meeting. It was for transparency's sake, and it's just turned into, but I think that's,
Maybe if we-
see the purpose.
In hindsight, it's like when we put them out there so that people could see everything. If we never had turned them on,
That's right.
then there probably would probably be have this. It's the fact that they were there and they were gone.
Yeah,
People feel like
most
their
places
voices getting taken away from them. You know?
don't have comments. Ripley started out with comments and they turned them off like after the first 2-3 meetings. I had a council member from another village, nearby village, and I said, why don't you guys cancel, you know, live streaming here? And she said, oh no, not after what we're here. And she said, we're not even going to live stream. And evidently those people don't ask. Mount Orab, they don't live stream theirs. You can't find a minute on their website. You know, I don't want to be like that. I want people to know what we're doing. I really do. And I want to hear, like Kelly said, I'm against Dora because of this. That's what I want to hear. I've had 2 comments from various people why they don't post on Facebook. Number 1, they disagree with the majority and they don't want to be bullied, basically. And number 2, and this is a quote. I'm not saying this, but this is what somebody did tell me, and I've heard it twice. If I get on there, I'll look as big an ass as they do, and I don't want to do that.
On that note, let's move on. How about that? Let's move on. We have the gentleman in the back with the cap on. Do you wish to address council? Sir, with the white hair. I hate to discriminate that you're white hair. Do you wish to address council? No. Ma'am, do you wish to address council? Sir?
No.
Ma'am? Yes. Okay. If you would introduce yourself to our streaming audience, and then you have 5 minutes, please.
My name's Brenda Wilder. I live on North Main Street here in Georgetown. And I just wanted to bring up concerns about the DORA, actually, and primarily why we have a committee right now regarding DORA when it wouldn't make sense to even plan on that right now. We don't have the establishments or the population that would justify us even looking into that at this point in time. In addition to that, the area in question that would encompass DORA involves residential areas. On the square, there are several, on every wall of the square, there are residents, people living there, one of whom is in the audience today. There are other reasons. The sheriff had come in and discussed the most recent report, and on most of the issues that he brought up, there was an increase in these crimes or these offenses. So I guess another question would be, if we did do DORA, how would it reduce that? In what way would it reduce that? But right now, having DORA, if you're talking about having other businesses who are interested in setting up in the community, we don't have that. We have one fledgling establishment that potentially would benefit from DORA. That's it. That's it. We have also Parker's Pizza, who's been established for many years, who is, I can't speak for them, but they appear to be doing very well with their business, and probably I can't imagine they would care one way or the other whether we have it or not. We have Main Street, where I live. Most of Main Street includes historic, larger homes that have been around for nice. Most of them are well manicured and well maintained. There are others in Georgetown, certainly, but that's the concentrated area of Main Street. And I guess I'm wondering, what that would mean for our living area and trying to maintain our property, trying to maintain decorum and keep it a family-oriented neighborhood. I don't see it certainly reducing any crime. I worry about, are people going to be urinating in my backyard? I worry about an increase in people getting pulled over. My husband and I were on the porch one night. We witnessed a man coming out of Parker's, and he was obviously intoxicated, which was verified by the police because we did call them. This man came out of Parker's, went across the street, and leaned his head on a truck parked across the street. It looked like he was looking in windows, and that's why we called. Evidently, he was impaired, but friends came to pick him up, so he wasn't in a car or anything that was driving. We see in Parker's parking lot, we've seen the police on several occasions arresting people who are either getting into their car from Parker's or, who are in their car, pulled over and placed into a police cruiser. I don't know why. I'm guessing because they were intoxicated, but I don't know that. So those are a few of my reasons for being opposed to DORA, one, and questioning, two, why this committee is even active, because certainly right now at this point in time, we really don't have the population nor the establishments to support it. That's all I have to say.
Well, we appreciate those comments, and that's what there is an ad hoc committee that is exploring this, and that's what they're doing, is trying to see what are the pluses, what are the minuses, before they would even bring that back to a council for that. Jeremy.
I just, hi Brenda, I'm Jeremy. And you may not, and this is fine. Do you want to discuss? I have things to say about this. There may be things you agree or disagree with, but they're quote unquote answers to some things you said. Is that something, are you here to look for answers, or do you just want to?
I wanted to just kind of cite my feelings and my perspective. I have, I think, other people here who also have some things to add, so I'll leave that to let them allow to speak their mind.
I just didn't know if you wanted feedback.
Not at this time. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I do think it's important to answer. There were two questions that I definitely wrote down. Why is there a committee? I know Dale touched on this. Do you want to answer that, or you want me to answer it?
Sure. I'll be happy to. So it's probably pretty important to understand that there's no committee needed for DORA. DORA is like everywhere else in the state. DORA is an act of mayor's creation. The mayor can say he wants a DORA, and we have a DORA. That's it. We intentionally did not want to do that because we wanted to involve as many people as possible. Is a DORA even a good idea, et cetera, et cetera? So the reason why we're having a committee is to decide if it's a good idea. Now, Dale officially, at my behest, I asked, I said, if we have the mayor say this, we can look into having a DORA. And Dale said, let's look into having a DORA. So that's why we have the committees. We, in theory, don't need any of them whatsoever. We could have filled out the paperwork last December and just gone right with it. So the committees are a way to judge the pulse of the village and see if this is something we want to have or not. So critical to understand is we don't know if we're going to have a DORA. That's why we're doing this. It's an exploratory thing, not a Am I skipping any part of it? Okay.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
And also too, the committee members that are on it, it's not open and shut. I mean, I know for myself, I don't know where I stand on it. So just because I'm on the committee helping to explore the topic doesn't mean that I'm 100% for Adora. I truly don't know where I stand. I think I know where I stand, but I mean, it's all completely exploratory. Somebody,
I think it's even better than that because I believe, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, we kind of have one person for, we kind of have one person against, we have one person against, and then we have somebody who's on the fence. And I think that's the best kind of committee you can have.
We council people that aren't even part of the committee, and there's a misconception that all the council is talking
Right.
about this and thinking about voting it in. So
Yeah.
if you could,
Good point.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's still in the phase of what does the community think about it? Let's,
Right.
get some opinion. Jeremy went door to door, was it 2 weekends ago, kind of around the square, trying to get some feedback. I don't know if you got the whole square or what area. I know you were doing some targeted marketing to get feedback from people that live right around there. So again, it's just, it's an idea that was brought. I know somebody mentioned it to Jeremy, and Jeremy had been talking about it. So somebody within the community wants Adora. And so we felt like we could take the time to at least explore the idea and see what the vibe was. And that's where we are. Nobody is set in stone on what's going to happen. We'd still have to take a vote on it. It still has to be presented to council. So, I mean, that's just where it is. So again, I mean, just because there's a committee, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think the committee was put together in good faith just to see what the community wants.
I have one thing very quickly to say. Thank you, Brenda, because you said, I don't like the door and these are the reasons. And you did that on Facebook too. And I thanked you on Facebook because you brought a couple things up I hadn't thought about because I don't live on North Main. But that's the kind of feedback, maybe it's negative, Dora, but I want to hear what people honestly feel about. You're in a different situation. I don't live near there. So I'm glad to hear about somebody who lives there and about trash and whatever. Anyway, I just want to thank you for.
Hey, we have Chris Porter,
Reasons.
if you would introduce
Porter,
yourself.
North Main. Another reason we don't want Dora, and we're all here because we don't want Dora, is the town really can't afford it. We have bigger issues that we need to take care of in this village than worry about people drinking on the street and providing cups for these people.
Thank you. Ma'am, do you wish to address council? Sir?
My name's Steve Parks. I live up here on the square on Grand Avenue. I was wondering about when you're going to fix the sidewalks out front. That's been going on for at least 10 years. Every place is done except for our side. And, it's got the old parking meter poles in there, and it's all lumpy. Somebody fell a couple years ago and sued. Nothing came of it. But, and then there's the drain problem there. That all fills up with water, and the coffee loft customers can't get in and out. And that's what I got to ask about that. Does anybody know anything about the grant to get that fixed?
I do know for the water issue, Art was sending the crew up. I think it was about a week and a half ago, the day that we had some really heavy rain. I was one of those people, but
She said
Shannon actually reached
that.
out to me before all of that and related over to Art, and he was sending Jeremiah a couple
It
of them
needs to be
out.
altered out a little bit. I go down there and I clean it out. There's weeds and pop cans that get in there, and it really
Yeah.
makes a mess.
So I know there was some initiation there to kind of figure out what we could do to fix it, but
But nobody knows anything about fixing the sidewalk. They've dropped that, huh?
Well, sidewalks are normally the property of the property
Oh,
owner.
well, it goes, they've done everybody else's. Why do we have to do it?
Well, those were grants. There was grants that were provided for that. If there's grant money out there, we would love to do that because it would complete that block.
Right.
Yeah.
It looks bad, all those poles and wires all caught.
Yeah.
And that's something else I'd like to bring up is, about the live stream and the comments. I just had surgery last week. I've got gaping holes in my stomach. I don't want to come down here. I'm wearing these gloves. I don't want to touch the doorknobs and stuff. I saw that the average person in Georgetown is in their late 40s. And, you know, there's a lot of people that's sick and stuff who can't come here and be touching stuff and, you know, dirty seats and stuff. I don't want to seem like a germphobe, but, you know, we need to let people comment. If you need a mediator or whatever, it shouldn't be that big a deal.
Anything else?
Anybody got any comments?
Well, I mean, comments can be made either calling our offices like you are here, talking to council members on the street, whatever the case may be. There, we do have comments that can be made on our website, I believe. So, you know, there's plenty of avenues to express that.
And let's not forget, when all the nasty comments came out, they were trying to get rid of you and the chief, and there was a lot of hostility. And that's when they're kind of judging on that, had everybody riled up. And now they're saying, well, I don't know, you know, it was nasty. Well, you know, yeah, it was nasty, some of it. You know, that's the way it goes.
We appreciate your comments and you being here. If you have nothing else, we'll move on if that's okay. All right. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. I think I've touched base with everybody out here. We'll move on to our regular items in our general business. We have in your packet, starting on page 1, and we'll wait until this group leaves. Go on. On page 1 of your packet is the minutes from our January 26th regular council meeting minutes. And we need to see if there's any additions, deletions, or alterations to these minutes. If there are none, then we would entertain a motion to approve them as written.
1 second, please.
Okay.
There'll be discussion afterwards, right?
Yeah, we got a
Sorry.
motion by Kelly.
And I'll second.
We have a second. Any comments? If not, we will do a roll call.
Can you hold on a second,
Okay, you do
please?
have comments? Okay.
Not to beat a dead horse. On the meeting minutes, under the, it's page 2, under the heading, section, Councilmember Wolf talked about the comment on live stream meetings question, what the current policy is regarding comments. The response was that the village needed to segregate official business from the toxicity of social media. Could you add, I expressed repeatedly during my roundtable that I was in favor of the comments being on. Could you just reflect that in there? By the way, I have a new job now doing what you do for a committee, and I will never, I'm like so timid about telling you to add or do anything because it's a hard job. It's a hard job. But I'm still going to do it. But
Well, we can make that additional comment in there.
yeah, please. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? If not, we have a motion by Kelly, a second by Steve, I believe. Let's do a roll call vote.
Mark? Yes. Kelly?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
There's also on page 5, it's the review of the Emergency Services Committee meeting on January 31st. If there's anyone that wishes to make a comment in regard to that, they can do so now. If not, these are for your information.
I would just make a quick comment. Being on the Emergency Services Committee, I continue to believe that this is a very positive direction we're headed in. And I mean, we can't stop now, but I'm just very, I'm in a good place on how things are going. I hope everybody else is too. But I'm seeing a lot of positive movement being made here. So for the record.
No other comments? We will move on. On page 6, we have an ordinance to approve the Ohio Basic Code. That is kind of our Bible, so to speak, of how we operate here in the village of Georgetown. So it's something that we pass each and every year. There isn't much in the way of alternatives for us to do this, with this, so we need to pass this. So Kelly, if you could read this by title only.
An ordinance approving, adopting, and enacting American Legal Publishing's Ohio Basic Code 2023 edition as the Code of Ordinances for the municipality of Village of Georgetown, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Comments? If not, we would need a motion to adopt.
I'll make the motion to adopt.
By Nancy, do we have a second? By Jeremy, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
It's 1329.
I have a question about this for Joe. I know before I've tried to go online to search this, like you can the ORC and that. And usually the only way I can ever find it is if I go into a village that has it. Is there a site or something where?
Yeah, I've actually spoken with I've actually spoken with the publishing company. We can do that, but we have to pay them a fee to do so. If the village or if the council would like, I can get a quote on that. I know there's a yearly cost, but that can be done.
Can we just see what it is? Strangely enough, that's so weird you bring it. I recently had somebody, wanted to look up the code, the ordinance.
The Ohio
on
Basic
their-
Code.
That was on their ticket and research it.
I think it's something we could look into. I know Art's not here tonight, so maybe we'll pass that on to
if it's
Art because I think that's
very
something
much,
that
I'm
should come
inclined
out
to
of the
say no,
village
but I'd just be
budget.
curious.
Well,
to
so
know.
much of what we do is based on this, yet
Yeah.
there's not an easy way to.
We'll pass that on to
research
the
it.
administrator.
Okay.
I would also point out for you that I myself have had difficulty looking it up when we've had cases of prosecute in mayor's court or transfer cases. So I think there's a very legitimate reason. And the chief has actually talked about, is there a way to tie it into the webpage and things? And I think he's right. We have to pay for that.
Yeah, obviously it's copyrighted like most things, and you have to pay a fee to have
I would
it on
just
your-
use some other village that's paying.
We'll pass
for
that on.
That later takes us to Felicity. Yeah.
it. Yeah.
All right.
There is somebody
very
I always
good.
use and I can't remember.
Okay, on page 30 in your packet is an ordinance for our annual appropriation. It's our budget. It's our final budget to be presented to the county auditor. And so we don't need to read this by title, do we? This is just a motion to approve?
Yeah.
Okay. You've been aware of our budget for many months now. So what we need for this to pass is a motion to that effect.
So moved.
By Kelly, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Steve. Let's do a roll call vote. Brian, please.
Kelly?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Mark?
Abstain. I don't know what I'm voting on.
It's our annual budget. We will move on. That passed. We'll go on to page 121. It's the payment listings. I'm sorry?
We had two add-ons.
Okay, we have two. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Before we go to that, we have an ordinance
Did I
that,
give you the number on the annual?
no, you did not. What's the
1330.
1330 is the annual budget. Solicitor Braun has another ordinance that he's prepared.
The thing in front of you is a resolution authorizing an amendment to the agreement that you may recall that we reached with Rumpke and their other entity known as Legacy Inc. This related to something we've talked about a lot in our council meetings regarding the village sign and the fact that our previous agreement with Rumpke gave us an easement for a village gateway sign and also the payment of $20,000, as you recall, to the village. That was to go towards the actual paying for those signs to be constructed and installed. I can't remember when. I think that was in I have the agreement here. We authorized that agreement back in. Let me just look here for you. I think it's important. It was a lengthy agreement that we authorized in
Got a copy of it in my car.
June of 21. So this amendment, though, will change that, and it will no longer give us an easement to put a sign in front of Rumpke, and the $20,000 payment will be directed to the cost of the proposed splash pad in the park. And I also provided a provision that in the event, for any reason, that splash pad does not go forward, it allows this council to designate it for any other municipal purpose. So that's the change. Rumpke has already signed off on it. It's pending your approval for adoption.
What point can we discuss this?
Discuss it right now.
Okay, I'll jump right in then. I'm so mad at myself because I left it out in the car. I brought the resolution that we passed originally.
I have it.
Okay. It's about that thick. It's got some pictures and stuff in it of the easement. So they got Byers Road. We tear down a house. We get $20,000 that was originally going to go to sign. We get an easement to put a sign on. Okay. And that resolution was agreed upon by council previously. I guess I don't understand. I am cool, and I'm cool with redirecting that $20,000 to the splash pad. But we still got sign. We didn't get a big sign, but we still got a sign. And in a previous meeting, we talked about the placement of that sign. And I thought, and maybe I heard it wrong, and it takes time to do it. So I'm not inferring that he should have had this done by now by any means, but Art had talked about looking at potential other homes that sign could end up at. Giving away this easement would take one of the choices off of the table. I see no reason when you enter into a transaction and I've got something you want, you got something I want. So we agree on some terms, and now we're going to take something off the table, not a piece of land, but an easement for a piece of land. What are they adding to the pot to equal thing? We had voted on this, 6 people, as being a fair, equal deal, equitable for both sides. And now we're going to forfeit part of our side and get nothing else in return. And so I would like to see this rewritten in such a way that says that the $20,000 can be redirected and leave the easement part intact. And maybe at some time we'll figure out that we don't want to ever put any sign there of any type. And then we can let that part go then, but I see no reason to take that off the table now.
One thing I would point out that you didn't say is that there's a very strategic annexation that's also part of this. There's some property that runs up 68 that they've agreed to annex into the village. That's significant because that will allow us to potentially annex in the future down 68. So I think that was one thing we got out of this. And as you may recall, we were trying to get some other properties to annex that Rumpke owned as well. We did not get those, but this would allow.
Okay, point taken. So that we get this annexation, we get $20,000, and we get a potential easement for a sign, and they get a house demolished, and they get Byers Road. Okay.
Oh, correct. But remember, the Byers Road was vacated at our request because we didn't want their trucks coming out on Mount Ora Pike. So that was something we wanted as well.
Understood.
Okay.
But transactionally,
you're right. We're giving up something. You're correct.
They're giving up. We're going to trade this for this, and now we're lessening our side of the deal for no reason.
So that was the only reason.
It cost them $0 to grant us an easement. So
in my negotiations with them, the only way they were willing to redirect the funds to the splash pad was to basically say, okay, then you're not going to be able to put that sign there on our property. I will point out, which I didn't point out to them in negotiations, we could technically still put some signs on their property. They just wouldn't be of the magnitude, like the electric and all of that, the lights, that we wanted previously.
Gosh, I wish I'd have brought that thing in, because I read it as 2 different things we were getting from them. $20,000 for a sign and an easement of land. There was actually 2 different stapled exhibits. Exhibit 1, or A, however it's worded there. Yeah. Okay. It references a tract of land. Exhibit B has a little star that talks about this might be where a sign would go on. This could be where the sign would go on that land, or whatever.
That is all true.
And even in the language of the document, it talks about an easement of land and an easement for electricity, and it talks about $20,000 for a sign. I don't think because the sign's not there right now, and maybe it'll never be there, that we just would forfeit that easement. I don't like it because we had spirited talk about the sign not being there, which, by the way,
I'd like to add something to that.
I'll shut up in just a second. The original agreement was voted on by 6 people, and now tonight, 6 people is going to vote to potentially give away the easement of land that was part of the original deal. Okay. What's made this even a discussion to give away that piece? So I'm sure people on the other side would say, well, we'll give that away because the sign's not there. That part wasn't ever discussed by the 6 people. So the beginning was, the end was, but this middle chapter in here was never discussed by the 6 of us. So the whole thing seems out of order to me. Not like this court's out of order, but it just seems like it wasn't done in the right order. And I don't see any reason to cheapen our end of the deal. That's ludicrous for them to say they won't give the money if we're not going to put the sign there, because it's not costing them anything to say you can use that piece of that ditch over there that we're not using for anything else in the world. That's not negotiating in good faith. And I think it needs to be rewritten, and I ask you to go back and ask them to rethink that point. And I feel no urgency to, well, I'm not inclined to think they're going to vote that way if you're going to tell me that, or they're going to be amenable to that. I don't feel any urgency. We're not breaking ground on the splash pad tomorrow. So that's,
If we back out on that, could they actually ask us to make Byers Road a better road, or have we
No,
abandoned that?
I think we have an agreement with them that they were going to give us $20,000 to be spent on a sign. And if they just say, stick to the deal, we lose $20,000 because we've had a change of policy in this council. At some point, you all change the idea of doing the sign.
We can put a sign there Monday.
That's right.
I mean,
And they'll contribute up to $20,000. So you're right. But there was a policy change by this council at some point, or by this village, to not put the sign that was proposed there that was going to cost significantly more.
Show me that policy. There was never a policy by this council to not put a sign on that piece of property. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, I've never seen
It
that.
doesn't exist. We didn't vote on that.
Well, it didn't happen. How about that? Yeah, I get your point. But what I'm telling you is that I negotiated the deal as I was told.
Oh, I'm not finding fault with you.
And what I will tell you is their position was that that's the deal. So if we want to go back to Rumpke, it's just Rumpke. I mean, I can go back to them, but I will tell you their specific statement to me was they wanted to wipe out that in exchange for this.
Something tells me you're a really, really, really skilled negotiator. I mean, that blows my mind. If you're selling me on the idea that we were fine with giving you $20,000, if you spent $20,000 to put a great big huge sign, let us borrow a piece of our property to put a great big huge sign on. But we're not cool with you putting a smaller sign in that same spot. I could really impede less on our property and take that money and build a nice splash pad for kids.
If I were jumping into their head, which again, they didn't make the statement, but if you look at how their entrance on 68 has evolved, I think I know the answer to this, which is they've ended up putting a flagpole, a sign, they have landscaping around it out there. And my guess, if I was them, is I would say, I don't want to further clutter our entrance because it's a distraction from what they put out there. That would be my belief after seeing what
Them
they did.
telling us they don't want to clutter by having a sign that
That's,
says
again-
Georgetown on their property.
Yeah, I got it.
Kind of insulting.
I know, but I'm just guessing that's why, because there is a lot out there right now.
You said earlier somebody instructed you on that handling of that deal. Can I ask who that was?
Yeah, my understanding is, Nancy, that through the administrator, that you told Art that you wanted that prepared and done. And I can also state that I did bring this up at a prior council meeting.
Yeah, it was done in a committee meeting.
In a committee.
So just to be clear, which deal? The
changing of it to go to
the
the
changing of it. So that's not the original debacle. Or
No.
I'm sorry, deal.
No, the original deal came when Tyler was administrator, and we negotiated that pretty heavily to get that land annexed. And
I'm just curious. I mean, I just find
It was
it
a different
extremely.
council.
I just find it extremely odd that
I've never sold a piece of property and let somebody tell me what I was going to do with the money. Or give, I guess, maybe it wasn't a sell, it was a give. But I don't understand the logic behind giving up the road for Rumpke to solve their problem as well as ours, slightly our problem, but really it could have been more their problem if we would have been forced issues.
So at the time that was approved, which again was a different council, the reason it was negotiated that way, I do remember this, was that the village didn't have the funds allocated for a sign of that magnitude, and the $20,000 underwrote it.
So we'll give away the farm to get $20,000 for a sign when we sit here with the balance sheet that we carry?
I'm just telling you that those
Because
are
I
the
mean,
terms.
I guarantee you that the tax dollars that was spent to make that road what it was huge in comparison. And I don't believe I voted yes on that at all. Matter of fact, I voted against that. And I was firm against it because I thought that it would be a better exit point to come into Georgetown for delivery of like a truck and trailer as opposed to making that abrupt turn.
Now,
So
that
I'm just
road
curious-
that road was never maintained by the village of Georgetown. That was put there by the state of Ohio because that used to be US 68. And it was just absorbed by us. I don't think it was ever used for much of anything other than just for them to get back there to their office building.
But if the whole thing is the deal is contingent on having that sign there, the last thing that this council ever passed was that we were going to annex that land and put a sign there.
You're correct. You
So
don't
how
have
does-
to
how
accept
does-
the amendment.
So why would Rumpke think that that's still not going to happen?
That we're not going to put a sign there?
Yeah. That's the last word they got from us. That's what we signed. That's the resolution we passed.
So Nancy, do you want to elaborate on what the committee decided?
It was decided in CDC and the ad hoc signage committee that sign was not going to go out in front of Rumpke.
But why didn't that committee broker this whole deal? Why was this part voted on for us to annex the land and put a sign on it and to get $20,000 and do a road, but then a subcommittee can undo what a full council did?
The only way it can be undone is if you approve the amendment. If you don't approve the amendment tonight, the original deal sits.
But he asked if that money could be used for the splash pad instead of the sign. And Joe said he would talk to him. And then when he came back, this is what the result of that deal is. Am I correct?
Yeah, so if you don't amend it, it stays the way it is.
So, so I would like, and I'll probably go down in flames, but that's fine. I would, you tell me what I need to do here. If I need to I would make a motion. I like half of this. I want the 20,000 to go to the splash pad. Why they couldn't still grant us an easement on that piece of property is not being a good community neighbor. I'm sorry. So
I'd like to make a motion to pass. I move to take a vote on this resolution.
We have a motion to approve the resolution that has been presented to council.
I was trying to, but
Is there a second to that?
What was your I'm sorry.
I was asking how to make a motion to have this amended to take out the language
Yeah,
relative.
that's different.
So that's a
My
different, okay.
motion was to
If-
accept
Well,
this.
let's go back to Steve. If he
Okay,
wishes to make
Steve.
that a motion,
Sure.
he can make that motion.
Let it properly die, and then you can do yours.
Okay, Steve, if you kind of want to,
Well, I don't know if we will or not.
Steve, if you want to kind of stumble through that one again, please.
I make a motion that.
Back for further negotiation.
That Mr. Brown send this back for further negotiation, specifically that all elements that remain of this can stay intact, minus the part about forfeiting the easement.
I second
We have
that.
a motion, we have a second there. Any comment before we vote?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, too many hands here. Jeremy, then Mark, and then Kelly.
Okay.
Okay, mine's a pretty simple one. Joe, and if you cannot or choose not to answer this, it's fine. Did I hear you say at some point here that what Steve is asking for, you kind of already tried and it wasn't getting a lot of play?
Never heard that a bit.
No, that's why I'm asking, because I might have misheard.
When we negotiated
Yes.
with them, these are the terms under which they were willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought those back to you in the form of an amendment which is what you see in front of you. They were pretty adamant that they wanted the easement gone in exchange for in other words, to help us by redirecting the money. I didn't ask why, but they were pretty clear that that's what they wanted. I then took it back and I have discussed it with the administrator, and I think the committee is aware of it, or at least the members of the committee. So if you instruct me to go back, I can do that.
So I'm just very stuck on the fact that the six elected council people here said, you're going to give us 20, you're going to give us an easement, we're going to give you a road. And we also said in that agreement, you know, if what I'm being told is that we were going to put a sign there, how did we end up putting the sign somewhere else if that's what the six of us voted?
I agree with you. And you guys can hash that out. But what I will tell you is I do remember sitting in a council meeting and there being a statement made by council and in council that it was not what we wanted to have the sign in front of the landfill. It was not a good location.
Nancy said that.
Right. It was said. And at that time, that's when I indicated to you I would go back and renegotiate it. So all I can present to you is what they were willing to agree to. If your motion carries and I go back, I will absolutely try to renegotiate the deal.
Okay, so, sorry, I went out of order.
Mark, please. I have 2 or 3 comments. Your exact motion is what, Steve?
For Joe to go back, for Mr. Braun to go back and renegotiate the deal, specifically that they still get Byers Road. The house has already been taken down. We get the $20,000 to use for the splash pad, but we would still like to maintain the easement that they originally said they would give us as part of the deal. It doesn't cost them anything to give us an easement. And we may not ever move that sign back there. And if we don't need the easement at that point, we can say, you know what, we've decided to put the sign somewhere else. You can have your easement back.
So I just have, are you making a motion to amend what was?
I'm making a motion for him to renegotiate this. He's negotiated with them and brought us a resolution.
Okay. That resolution, according to my understanding of parliamentary rules, that resolution needs to be first brought to a vote, and then you would make a motion to amend that vote, and then that would be declined.
Your understanding is wrong. We've already passed a resolution. We did it 6 months ago. We passed a resolution that said that we would have that easement and that we would put a sign on it.
I have no comment.
Yeah, Kelly, do you have a comment?
Kind of lost it actually. So Steve, you want to keep the easement in there. That sums it up, right? You want to keep the easement. And then is the intention to put a sign there? I know we're still kind of in the mix
That's
of.
not what's
Great question.
decided.
Great question. Art had said, I wish he was here, that he was, there was some conversation about it. And Art, if you remember, at the end of the meeting, he said, listen, people, he kind of interrupted all of us and said, why don't you allow me to go out and talk to some different places and research some different places, and I might bring back to you a choice of other places that we could put, or we may leave it where it is in the cemetery. Okay. And this might be one of the ones in play. Why take it out of play? They've already said that we could potentially put a sign there.
Because one of the reasons the committee doesn't want it out there, we're not saying don't, I know how y'all feel, but the reason we don't want it out there, because it doesn't do anything for the village out there. What we want out there is historical directional signs that say Georgetown Historic District with an arrow and 2 miles. Under that, we want a sign that talks about, that says the Grant Schoolhouse. We want a sign that says the Grant Homestead. Rumke's right. It's going to get so cluttered, nobody's going to see anything. And we want directional signs that will tell people, turn here.
Councilperson Montgomery, here's my problem with this all along, and I'm trying to be kind about it. That's not the function of that sign committee, of that ad hoc committee. That ad hoc committee was formed when we all decided we didn't want the big gaudy signs and to put that much money into them, and to hold a little thing upstairs and select different samples and facilitate that so that we could pick a new sign. Not a new location for a sign, and not other entrance signs and all kinds of other signs. So that committee,
Also part of that
an ad hoc committee does
too.
not, an ad hoc committee does not have the authority to undo a resolution that this
No, we don't,
that this
but in
council
the
did.
discussion,
And I've never, and again, I'm so mad I didn't bring it in here. You told me at a meeting that nobody cared about that sign where it currently was at. And I said, yeah. The
I
person,
didn't say nobody. I said I hadn't heard nobody say anything to me about it.
You initially said that. I said the gentleman at the podium has a problem with it. I have a problem with it. Mayor Cowles, he said, you said you need to go out and talk to your constituents. So I did. I talked to 53 of them. They're in my car. If we want, I don't think we want to. But
3 people in
yes,
your car.
a list of, yes, they're in the trunk. I talked to 53 people. One of the 53 said, I don't want it at the cemetery or by Rumpke. The other 52 said, I do not want it in the cemetery. I'm fine with it being out there by 68. If that's where you guys were, okay, so I didn't know what answers I was going to get when I did, but I did what you told me to do and overwhelming. So I didn't want to get it in. Right. I didn't want to get into
that.
But a lot of people the question I kept getting is, how did it get moved down there? Steve, you're on council. Why did you vote it down there? And now you don't. I said, we didn't. Council voted to get the land and to put the sign there. And then an ad hoc committee who doesn't have that power vested in them undid what we all voted on doing. Yes, they did.
Okay, so let's vote.
Okay,
If
we have,
you
we
want
have,
to
okay, we have a
do
motion
nothing
by
like this
Steve
and
on the
go back.
floor. We have a second by Michael
Right.
to go back and send it back for renegotiation. So that's the
No.
motion on there. So we'll have to do a roll call vote on that.
Can I just clarify something
Yes,
real quick?
please.
So to Steve's point, the ad hoc committee was put in place to choose a sign.
Correct.
Okay. And that sign, okay, that sign.
But the location was under discussion too.
Okay, so they chose a sign and that sign is in place at the cemetery, whether or not you agree with it or not. So if we were to put a sign out by Rumpke, then because they chose a sign, it would be a sign it's the same sign that's in the cemetery that would go to Rumpke, right?
No, we take the one out of the cemetery and move it to Rumpke.
It could, yeah.
Or we take the one out of the
Or
cemetery
it
and
could
put
be
it in
another,
Rumpke.
it could be a different
Or it
sign.
could be another one that looks just like the one in the cemetery. Although there's already 3 other signs that say Georgetown at the cemetery, but heaven forbid we would take this 4th one we just
Okay,
put out there. But
so to my point though, okay, so I think I'm just trying to make this make sense in my head. So we empowered a committee to make a choice on the sign that we wanted for our entrance. They made that choice. That sign example is in the cemetery. So that committee chose that sign. So I guess in my mind, I'm saying if we were to keep the easement, that's the sign that's going to go by Rumpke because that's what the committee chose and that's the power we gave them.
cool with me.
Okay, so then I'm not cool with that because I don't like that sign. I think it
Okay.
would look silly out there.
No,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but my question to you would be, are you cool with the fact that we made a deal and said we were going to get a piece of land, an easement of land to put a sign on it, and then somebody undid the deal in an ad hoc meeting?
I will say this, the administrator is almost certain he's got a good place for the sign and is not in front of Rumpke. Let's put it that way. But
That gives me some
Yeah.
peace of mind on this.
And the other signs that we're talking about, the historical signs and that, we don't need their permission. We can put it in the right of way. Correct?
So to make sure, a yes vote means
go back to the drawing
go
board.
back. A no vote means that we could move on to accept
Forget
this.
signs for a
Yes.
minute. Why give up something that we already got in a deal?
Okay.
Why? Why give it up?
Okay, we've got that motion. We have a second. Let's do a roll call vote, please, Brian.
Mark? No. Kelly?
What was the tutorial again?
Yes means send it back. No means we're going to vote on it as is.
Okay, no.
Mike?
Yes.
Nancy?
No.
Jeremy?
No.
Steve?
Yes.
Motion fails. So this will proceed with this one here, but we do need to approve this one separately, Joe? Is that correct?
Now we need to vote on the amendment.
Okay, do we need to do this? Was that the?
Yes.
Okay, we have a resolution in front of you. Kelly, you need to read that by title only, please.
Okay, a resolution approving an amendment to the agreement with Legacy Inc. and Rumpke Waste Inc.
kind of,
Motion.
we've kind of talked, we made the motion for that. Is there a second?
Yes, discussion.
Yes.
If this resolution were to pass tonight in full council by a vote here, if, say, I'll just give a hypothetical, down in the subcommittee level, say in my emergency services committee, we decide that, that the current location of the sign poses a danger, we could move the sign without the consent of the full council.
You'd have to come back and vote on it.
Oh,
In this agreement, you mean?
well, we've
You
already,
mean the sign that's already out there?
let's go ahead and vote. Let's go
Yeah,
ahead
the
and vote.
sign that's already out there was not placed pursuant to an agreement. So, yeah, you'd have to
It
vote.
was placed.
I see your point. I see your
It was
point.
placed contrary to the agreement, right?
Your point is something different than I'm saying.
And what's the repercussion to that? Nothing? We just, whatever?
That's for you guys to decide.
We have a motion by Nancy to approve this resolution. Is there a second for that?
You already approved this, you already seconded it, didn't you? So you could discuss?
I didn't second, I didn't want to do that.
Well, then how did you discuss? I thought you said yes, and then you went to discuss it.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Oh.
I guess I could say. You can second it, so vote against it.
No, we need a second.
Second by Mark Anderson, Mark Robert Anderson.
Thank
So let's
you,
do it.
Mark
Let's do a vote,
Anderson.
please.
Mark,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mike,
No.
Nancy,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Steve.
Nah.
Okay.
No.
The resolution passes, and that's number,
That is 1329.
Can I make a comment real quick?
yes.
I know the question of the ad hoc committee and how the sign got moved based on what our powers were. I honestly think, I remember Nancy, and because we had a huge discussion about this a few months back when everybody was upset about where the sign was. And Nancy talked about how it was talked about in the subcommittee, and then, it was talked about in the actual, the ad hoc in the committee. And then I remember her saying specifically, if I didn't tell you in this council meeting, I'm sorry, I thought I did.
Yes, I remember that.
Maybe one of the things we need to look at as we assign ad hoc committees is, I don't know what the charter says, but maybe there should be written instruction, or there should be something that's more formalized, because a lot of times, Dora is an example, a lot of times we push stuff to an ad hoc subcommittee, and it's kind of just in passing that we do that. And then the miscommunication does happen. And that's exactly what happened here.
But it still
Well,
should
and I
have been
should have been
voted
better
on,
about
right?
that, because at the time, I remember when the other committee, when they pushed the big signs through, and nobody knew about them or anything else. And it
Example.
wasn't brought to a vote to council until Steve and I were both on there. And because that was within the administrators, and that was Tyler then, that was in the administrators, so that never got voted on or anything either.
Yes.
So I think that just because it's in the administrator's budget or
Spending
his, under his
What
spending
spending?
limit,
And when
I
we
do think we need to, and like I say, that was my
And
bad.
when we do stuff in subcommittee, we usually have, like tonight, we had meeting minutes from the ESC. Well, next council meeting, we'll have meeting minutes from your CDC meeting tonight. But we had no meeting minutes from that
Right.
we could have prevented some of the, and I'm not casting fault, but I mean, it would have probably never gotten to a point where it's like, the signs where? We would have seen those conversations in real time, or a week or so as they were happening. So that's a great point.
Quick comment to Kelly's point. Good news, the charter allows us to do a lot of, there's not a lot set in stone about that. So we can make rules and the mayor can make rules on that. So I think it's going to be fairly easy to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, they have it in front.
Maybe that's a work session item that we
Yeah.
put together
Yeah.
on how we work with
Let's
ad
have an
hoc.
ad hoc meeting.
Let's not.
Who wants to be on that?
An ad hoc committee about how to have ad hoc committees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, well, let's
Lead,
move
Dale,
on.
lead.
It's past my
That's
bedtime now, but in your packet in front of you, it's separate from your minute meetings or meeting minutes. is an ordinance to approve the creation of a port authority within the village of Georgetown. Do you all have that in front of you? It's a first reading.
Okay.
Do you see it all?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Kelly, if you would, please read it by title.
An ordinance authorizing the creation of a port authority within the village of Georgetown, Brown County, Ohio, pursuant to section 4582.22 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Questions? I'll let Joe go ahead and preface some of this.
So Jason Hammond and I put this together based on an understanding that the council wants to move forward with this. Obviously, you can have that discussion as a council now because there's a first reading in front of you on it, but this follows the Ohio Revised Code. And just so you know, in chapter 4582, I've actually got a complete copy of it right here because it's very confusing. And confusing by the fact that there's actually two types of port authorities you can form. There's one that is formed pursuant to 4582.02, and there's another that's formed under 4582.22. We're requesting it be formed under 4582.22, which has broader powers than the more limited port authority that the 02 section provides for. The requirements for serving, the requirements for forming, I read it painstakingly over the past 2 days because I couldn't understand the difference, are the same. And so this is Jason's recommendation that we do it under this section because he would like to grant them the broader powers versus the more narrow powers. But as I indicated, it's not magic that we created a 5-member board. That's what the ORC provides for. There's no magic to the fact that the mayor makes the appointments and you approve them. That's also in the ORC. And there's really not much magic to the fact that there's a minimum requirement that you reside, have a business in, or work in the village of Georgetown in order to be eligible. That's all in the ORC. It's not something that I whipped up, on my computer. So we're presenting it as a first reading tonight. I would encourage you to go read this on your own and then maybe bring your questions back to the next meeting to have that in-depth discussion about it. Or if you're prepared tonight, obviously I'll answer your questions to the extent you have some. But we prepared this based on your recommendation that we move forward with it.
I have a very superficial, just very light question on this. So the mayor will appoint the 5 people, much like he did with the zoning appeals. And
He
a lot of
recommends.
other things. Do you plan to be? You plan to really do that? I mean,
No, I'm going to count on you all to give me.
that's not really the answer I wanted. Okay.
Okay. I want you to give me your input. I guess it is my final say.
You wanted to appoint anybody that you did not feel was good at it. I
don't have all the answers for that. So, I have a couple of people I think would be very good on it, but, that's where I fail is continuing with all of them. So I will, implore upon you to help me with that.
That was really my only question. This is a first reading, so we'll read this again. And if I don't know if this is the time or the place. I mean, I just to have a very frank, open conversation about this real quick is that I remember Councilperson Montgomery telling me about port authorities like 2 or 3 years before I was on council. And I've looked at it real hard lately, and I think I get for sure all the strategic benefits of having it. The only thing I'm just pulling the heads of my fellow council people is when I heard the presentation from Jason Hammond, I heard a lot of talk about, kind of having a qualified kind of administrator, director over hovering himself. And then I kind of heard himself sort of pitching himself into that role. Is that a foregone conclusion that if we get a port authority, I'm asking the other 5 here, that's how that's going to necessarily foreshore the role? Not that that would be a bad thing. He might be a great person to be over it, but
It could be anybody, but he could do it.
Is that the choice as of now, or are we going to even consider looking, or is that?
This ordinance here is just to pass the ordinance to form a port authority. It doesn't hire anybody for that capacity.
Yeah, but we won't really have I mean, it's ultimately up to you though, who is on that committee. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, by
you know.
Ohio Revised Code, yes.
I think that one thing, and I think Jason is probably a good fit for this, if not for ever, at least to begin with, to get them on the right path. I think that's one of the mistakes that the CIC made. They didn't really have anybody on there that knew what they're doing, and they have floundered. And I think that we don't want to do this. This is a much bigger thing, and this is really can have great potential for us. And I think it's really important, number one, that we have 5 really top-notch people. But I just think that Jason is knowledgeable enough. He brings a skill set nobody around here has. And like I said, I'm not saying forever, but I think to at least get it going and to provide some leadership.
I agree
for a little
that
while.
Jason or somebody like Jason, of which there are several of in the area, probably even closer, than Cleveland or Lake Erie where he lives. And I'm not ruling him out. And I'm getting the answer I just wanted to know if that's what I wanted was the feedback. If that's just the route that, for sure that people feel that's going to go.
Any other questions, comments? If not, then we'll just put this to bed for tonight. Then we'll have a second reading, more discussion at our next council meeting. Okay, we will move on. Items from the staff on page 121 is your payment listings. And we can try to go through some of those if any of you have questions. If not, we can get those answers from either Brian or Natalie.
I have an observation or maybe a takeaway possibly from the payment listings.
Yes.
And or the credit card report.
Yes.
Something that I think I see continuously or maybe just more often than not is that we pay a lot of money for different software solutions. For example, in the credit card report, you guys will see this month that we paid, I think it was like $5,000, over $5,000 for 2 types of Microsoft Office 365. I'm assuming probably like a subscription or something. We also pay for Adobe. We also pay Go to My PC. That's a biannual renewal, $753. What else have I seen? Oh, and
They're
then
using Go to My PC for now.
I don't even know what it
I mean,
is.
I understand 5 years. Okay.
Yeah, that's not my expertise. I know it's software. But on the specific to the payment listing, there is a software solutions on there for over $9,300. So my question is, if we're spending that much, and I feel like I see it a lot more than on these reports, shouldn't we be looking to a consulting company, a larger firm to really be handling all of this for us?
Now, Software Solutions is all the utilities
Okay.
software. It's proprietary. It's theirs. I mean,
Oh,
it's
it does the online billing and stuff.
yeah, it does
Oh, okay.
all that. Well, it's not so much online billing, but it does all of it. When we download our handhelds, it goes into Cassandra and Jennifer and Kelly. And then Software Solution provides some of that software that then interprets it and delves it out onto wherever it goes. But
And this is don't they have new software now? It's
yeah,
gonna
they
be
got new software. So I
just
don't know.
rolled out
I don't know
like the
whether this
first
is
week of
I don't know whether
March.
this is inflated
It's-
because they had to get new software for that or not.
Nancy, is there, Nancy, in the school world, how with, it's mostly Google nowadays, but, or you, actually, you would know a lot about this too. Those platforms that are like offered for like pennies on the dollar for schools. If you're XYZ company and you were going to buy the Google Workplace platform for 1,000 employees, it would cost you $1 zillion. But when you're a school district, it's real. Do they do that for governmental agencies?
Yes. Well, they do it for nonprofit agencies, of which schools and governments fall into. How is very nuanced, slice and dice, but the short answer is 99% of the time, yes.
Because every single service that's offered in Microsoft 365 has a Google counterpart. And if that can be got for free.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Art asked me to pass on that the software solutions is the billing software. And he did indicate that he's working with getting an IT company that can help do some of that, I guess, integration. So he said, he mentions it in his written report that he submitted to you. So I just wanted to pass that on.
And I think Software Solutions has been the provider for the utilities for probably 40 years.
Because they've been doing a lot of training on it.
They used to be in Lebanon, Ohio. I don't know whether they're still there or not, but
Training on software solutions.
On
or-
the software, the utility
For the
billing,
utilities,
they're
yeah.
rolling it out soon. And I mean, they've been working on this like a year, I think.
I think to Ms. Cornett's point, though, I'm seeing charges for software on here that you can source for free, you know? so-
Yeah, to follow up Steve's question really quickly. One, correct. Two, we already set up a Google account for the village in order to set up YouTube, so it could be completely ready to go. Three, if anybody wants me to, I volunteer to help in that transition because I really can do that. Four, there may be some things we need to look into about like security kinds of things or very, very specific aspects of certain kinds of software that Art might want or need for a real reason.
And we do like an internal firewall or something here to.
So that's beyond my
We
capabilities.
do have a firewall, but this is just me being a computer nerd, but my concern with going to Google, there's a reason why it's free. It's because they're
100%.
selling information. So, you have to consider that, especially if you're going to have any forms that are on the cloud or anything like that.
I have to,
People's vital information on them.
I can't believe, we have all our student records on Google. If it's that big of I don't know a school that anymore that doesn't use Google, and that's all minors' informations and everything like that. So I don't know, maybe you're right, but
Rob is undoubtedly right, but I don't know what to degree and how bad we
Okay.
need to worry about it. That's outside my range.
Well, that would be-
I know he's got a critical point.
that would be a
Don't
good
want to
reason.
get
100%.
sued because somebody's information got out and it got tracked back because we were
Well,
using
that's
Google.
fine. As you go to putting everything in the cloud and everything, we really need to beef up our security and.
The one thing I'm not sure about is that Microsoft 360 that we've got right now is any better than that. And it may well be, but first glance, I'm not convinced of that. So, and I could.
And it may not be,
Right.
but at least it's something we're paying for and they have some culpability.
So they get in trouble, not us. No,
You know.
that's legit. That's very legit. Yeah.
But I do think that we should relook at pricing and maybe see if somebody else can give us a better deal. I know there were some people that were added this year and some like the utility departments and stuff that did not have emails and they did not have access to the software and things like that. That happened within the last couple months.
Just for clarification, the Google organizational accounts, I know the free ones you speak of, like we still pay for them at the school.
Oh,
They're
you
just
do?
pennies
Okay.
on the dollar. So, you have a contract, we have a rep that we can call up and talk to on the phone every day. So it's worth looking into. And it sounds like Art is.
That's
So,
something I'm not
yeah.
familiar with.
And ours is branded. Yeah. So that it's not just generic Google, it's Forest Hills Google account kind of.
Yeah.
But you also have to remember how many accounts you're looking at as opposed to what this village would look at. Totally different.
Good point.
Totally different, especially pricing structure.
that'll be a future conversation. Art can look into that and with the chief and whomever else is there. So,
Okay.
any other questions on the payment listing? If not, we will move on to the payment register detail on page 123. Any questions in regard to that? That's the credit card billing, I think. And again, some of those were the same questions we raised just a few minutes ago by Kelly. We can get clarification on them. We'll go on to the bank reconciliation statement on 126. And again, any questions that are there are best suited for Natalie. And our fund summary report is on 127, our line items. If there's questions in regards to them, they can be brought up now. I might be able to answer some of them, but again, this is a Natalie question more than me. I'm going to gloss over this. We can come back to it if you wish. I'll go now with Chief Freeland with his police report. Do you have some numbers for us, Chief?
First, I just want to say I didn't have to directly follow the sheriff because the sheriff, if anybody ever spoke with him before, he's very well spoken. Yeah, with last month, we had 503 calls for service. And as you can see, we dealt with 135 different offenses last month. Additionally, just want to go back over, here's the mayor's court report. We are a little higher than we were last year at this time, which is good news. Hopefully that's a trend that continues. We have a lot of young officers and hopefully some more on the way that, will bring those numbers up. We just had a new part-timer that just started. He just got released out of FTO about a week and a half ago, Colin Blevins, and he's really doing a good job. And I have actually another officer that is in the hiring process right now that I hope to start in the FTO program here within the next couple of weeks. So, so far, all the initial contacts with him are positive. So, and so just to go back over some updates that were discussed at the ESC meeting, Lexipol, I spoke with Art earlier this week. There was just some discussion about would it be better to wait and see if we were going to do Lexipol as a village as a whole. He said that he was in contact with them, and he said that the discounts that would be offered were not worth the wait. So I went ahead and made contact with Lexipol. They are honoring the prices that they gave us last year, which is good. They actually sent me a contract today, which I actually emailed that to the mayor. The mayor has a copy of it, and I'll email all that out to you as well. So you can take a look at it. Something else that they put out to me today, which I was not aware of. And again, this is something we discussed at the ESC meeting. The state of Ohio has put out another 24 hours of training that they want us to do again this year. 8 of that will be on their website, which is called EOPATA. And 16 hours of it is for us to do locally. Kind of little apprehensive about that because there's going to obviously be some cost with that. We're just more than likely going to be something in person. You're going to have to hire an instructor, possibly pay overtime for people to come in, take those classes. Lexipol actually has their own online academy. Actually, I have a flyer for that as well, which whenever I forward that email to you guys, you will get a copy of that as well. Many different areas of interest, from just basic patrol tactics to somebody that wants to be a supervisor. And a lot of these classes have already been approved by OPATA. So basically, rather than having that expense, they're putting us at a cost of $88 an officer. This first year, they would actually only charge us for 7 if we agreed to do it. And then any year after that, if we continued to want to do it, they would charge us by the actual amount of officers that we used. So basically, any classes that we decide that we want the officers to take, we just forward that to OPATA. They say yay or nay, and we're good to go. So that covers that extra 16 hours at a very minimal cost, which I think is definitely something that should be looked at. And that's actually also in this quote that they gave me. As far as the online survey, an update on that, I have spoken with our web host who stated that the survey would be an easy addition to the website, including having the IP restrictions as far as, the person can only reply so many times before they're blocked. So it just keeps those people that just want to get on there just to harass.
Since that was in the emergency service committee, the other 3 council members aren't aware of that.
Yes.
So if you
Well,
follow
I
up-
think it was actually, was it actually discussed in an open council at some point in time? I think we were just going back over it.
Were we?
It was also in the report too, correct?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was a suggestion by Sue Matson for us to do. So we are looking into that. I've been researching some questioning and also the structure of the questioning, because you can have it as You can have it multiple choice where they just rate you, check the box, or you can actually just have a blank space where they write whatever they want. So, so there's obviously what we want to see what line of questioning and how we want them to answer. Property room, which was also part of the assessment. I've been in contact with Steve Moster with Loveland PD. He is retired, but he still does contract with Loveland to do their property room. He spoke with his boss at Loveland, and they're going to work with us to have him come out and help us with little to no cost, which is a good thing. So he is. I have put him in contact with Sawyer, our property room manager, and they are working out the details and the scheduling, and then once they figure that out, then we'll get them together and get that done for the audit of the property room. And the only other thing I have is that I currently have Matt Staggs. He's getting quotes for our bulletproof vests are expiring this year. So he's getting quotes for those. And so I can turn that into and apply for the vest grant so we can get that reimbursed. So
Do they do that vest grant every year?
yeah, they've been doing it pretty regularly for about the last decade. So
Any other questions for the chief?
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
what happens to the old vest? I don't want one. What happens to the old vest?
I mean, we usually, actually they're just trash. Nobody wants them. I mean, you're talking about 5 to 6 years of somebody sweating in it. Yeah. They don't breathe. So.
They're looking for people to see if they still
the reason why they have to be replaced is because your sweat deteriorates.
I got you. I just want.
I'm not going to say that one might not make it out to the firing range when we qualify and take a few shots at it to see how they hold up. So.
Any other questions for the chief? Go
I
ahead.
do have one, this is out of the blue, Rob, but I'm just curious, things jumping in my mind. I'm thrilled with the stuff you reported on Lexipol. Did, at any point in time, did they mention Cortico to you?
No.
Okay, legit, nope, done for now. That's perfectly fine. A conversation for a later time. That's,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else for the chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah, thank you. Nice report. The chief briefly touched upon mayor's court, and the mayor's court is up, so that's a good thing. The last thing in here is Art's administrator report. I'm not going to go through that. You can go through that at your convenience to try to come up with any questions that you may have with him as he gets back. He is sick today, so hopefully he'll be back to work here before too long. Okay, I guess we can go to our roundtable discussion, and we'll start with Mr. Mark Robert Anderson.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to be short, as short as possible. On Facebook, I hate Facebook. I think it's a waste of time. There was a comment by someone that Nancy, Jeremy, Kelly, and I violated the First Amendment by voting to take the comments off our webpage. I have a few questions for our lawyer, Solicitor Joe Braun. Is money a right or a privilege? Having money, is that a right or a privilege?
Privilege.
That's a moral question.
That's a moral question, yes.
This is like
Privilege.
boards, this is the boards.
Is having the internet a right or a privilege?
It's privilege.
Is having Facebook a right or a privilege?
Privilege.
Okay, if all those are privileges, either I'm not thinking right, or how did we violate anybody's First Amendment rights by taking the messages off Facebook? They're all privileges. Those are not entitlements. And with that, I yield back to the mayor.
Sir, Jeremy.
At the risk of being the most frustrating person in the room right now and doing my due diligence, I'm going to do my best due diligence as quickly as I possibly can. So I was tasked with bringing back information about Dora Here's what I've found so far. I promise it will be quick. I've spent a lot of time talking to people on the square. I'm not done yet. I'm going to continue doing that. What I have been getting back from people has been ranging between, when I've been talking to them face to face up to this point, has been ranged from neutral to optimistic. Cautious optimism is the best thing to say. I'll talk more about some things that happened today in just a minute. Some of the most positive people have actually volunteered to pay for some of the startup costs that the village would normally incur. I think the startup costs are going to be $500 or less, which is not much to make a investment in possible profits in the future. And in fact, the town of Ravenna recouped their initial outlay in one weekend, not their first one, but one weekend. So I've had people who have stepped up and wanted to donate. Fundraisers for kickoffs have been floated, and also a kickoff event should the DORA ever be adopted, which is absolutely not a foregone conclusion in the slightest. There are next steps to go forward. And by go forward, I don't mean necessarily to have the DORA, but simply to be able to vote on the DORA as a whole group, which is what needs to happen. I would like to state to everyone in this room, based on something that was said earlier, that once a proposal is put together, that everyone in this room will have that proposal significantly before the meeting where they're asked to vote so that they can have time to look over it and things like that. And that proposal, the only statement of that proposal is it's the best we've got to put together. We might still not like it, but that's the process that we go through here. I'm going to quickly, Ms. Wilder, I would like to thank you very much. What?
I hate it when you pick up multiple pages.
I'm sorry, no, this is gonna be quick, I promise. Ms. Wilder, I want to thank you for coming in. A couple of technical things I wanted to touch on. You said that Georgetown does not have the establishments or the population for our DORA. If you meant that in terms of your opinion, perfectly fine. But just so you understand, legally, technically, that is incorrect. We do have 3 establishments that qualify. I'm interested too. I'm there with you, Mike. One of which I'm not sure how it's going to roll out, and I need to have conversations with Solicitor Braun about that. But we have 2 for sure. And the population, well, certainly smaller villages than us have them going. So research shows that does not increase crime or offenses in the areas where it happens. I've researched Northeast Ohio. Nancy has researched Southwest Ohio, and there's no incidents in any place where we've researched where a DORA has caused that to happen. The idea that one business would benefit and that's it, I strongly disagree. That's the whole point of things. I believe that a rising tide floats all boats, and the more feet we get on that square, the more other people could potentially benefit. That's the theory. I mean, if we don't like that, don't vote for it, but that's what I'm kind of looking at. Why is there a committee at all? We had talked about that before. And Mr. Porter had said that the town can't afford it. Hopefully I addressed that in discussing how it's not much money, but also people are willing to step up and help out with that. I genuinely appreciate your patience. I would like to have a second, maybe final, meeting for DORA ad hoc committee, which we will absolutely make sure everybody gets the information on, next Wednesday evening, the 15th at 5 o'clock. I am aware that may or may not work for everyone, but I'm saying it out loud now so that if it does, people will be aware of it, and we can post that on the village website. And I think Councilman Mays and I need to talk afterwards briefly about how that fits with his schedule and stuff like that. So it's as fast as I could possibly do it. And I have 3 other issues. No, I'm kidding. I'm done.
Wednesday at 5 p.m.
Wednesday, the 15th of February at 5 p.m. here. Yes.
Maybe court that night.
Schneckes. Somebody help me out with that.
Text.
This is every other Wednesday.
I thought this was the other Wednesday.
I know, because I have to go to court.
Yeah.
Court's on the 15th at 4:30.
All right.
You guys can meet in the mayor's office.
You could.
Oh. Can I sit in the chair?
Only if you clean up
You
afterwards.
can't split
Well,
it.
I said sit. I said
Okay,
sit.
okay, okay.
Jeez, Dale. I got a little more control than that, my friend. Okay.
Is that what it is? The
Mayor,
15th?
just state that it's going to be in the mayor's office,
And it will be in the mayor's office. If,
and we'll have the ability to get in there, right?
If I'm not here, I'll give you the key to get in.
okay.
I'll say that time of day there should be
Still
somebody
open to the
here.
public.
Absolutely, it's open to the public. Yeah. I'm really done. Super done.
In the hush.
I was hushed and you didn't say anything.
Well, I was waiting for the mayor who runs
Okay.
the meetings.
There we go.
Second
Okay.
answer.
You can
Everybody
go
wants to
right
go.
ahead. You can tell him to hush up now, so you can go.
Dale said you can go.
Thank you. And I'm cutting, I had two things to talk about. I'm cutting it down to one. And that's only because there's time constraint. If y'all remember Ned Lodwick came to talk to us at the one meeting recently about fireworks. They, for Grant's birthday, they would like to do fireworks again. They would like to have it up at the square. They have the pedagogos are going to play. And then they're going to have a very short, he said probably 10 minutes maybe between Lincoln and Grant. And then they want to do the fireworks. And they would like, they're hoping that the village would contribute some to help them. So I talked to him today and he said that they would like a 50% contribution, which is like $5,000. And they'll, find the other 5,000. So Art said that it really needed to be decided tonight because he's got to start ordering stuff next week. So I guess we need to, do I need to make a motion? Questions? Not that I know much about it, but.
Nancy's made that motion to help the Grant
Yes.
Association do fireworks for that day.
And one of the questions that came up, who asked it about the insurance? Oh, Brian.
Brian did.
He said if we don't pay for all of it, will our insurance cover it? And I texted Art and he said, yes. He said, as long as the contract's in our name, our insurance will cover it. So that takes care of them for insurance plus, 5,000 from us, 5,000 from them. So I make a motion that we approve to do that.
Second discussion.
I think it's a good idea, and I like the fact that they reduced the cost too. They're taking a portion of it, because last year we paid 10,000.
Well, it was
Right?
only ended up being like 6,200 or something.
Well, I know we put aside 10,000.
Yeah, we pay, and he said it ended up 9,500 and then there were a few additional costs and stuff. But, 5,000 and that, I felt like they ought to pay half of it.
Mhm.
I don't mind giving it to them, but I think they need to pay half.
Yeah.
What time is that again?
I don't know.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay, very
I
good.
think,
can't
I
even
think
tell
that,
you
I
for
think
sure
that
what
would be
day
very
it
good for
is.
businesses.
I think it drew a lot of people into town when we've had it before.
Absolutely. A lot of people came in and ate and,
All right.
And it's not Grant's birthday and yes, it's for them, but it's also a community event kind of thing. So I think the village should support that.
Any more discussion?
Date of it?
I don't know.
Okay. That's all right.
I don't know whether that's
Trying to go
at
fast.
the end of April
fine.
or is that,
No, it's like, hang
It's
on.
okay. Just, we'll get it next.
No, hang on. You've got to know. Let's see.
Rob, how long you
I'm
been
going to
working
be wrong.
today?
It's either the 15th or the 22nd. It's either 15th or the 22nd. And honestly, I don't remember.
of what month?
April.
Oh, April, okay.
April 27th is his birthday. I don't know when they're celebrating it though.
But I don't think they are.
Yeah.
I think and I'll tell you, because also the school is doing, remember when they did that community day last year?
Yeah.
They're doing it on the same day. So anyway, I want to say it's either the 15th or the 22nd, but you'll have plenty of notice before then.
We have a
find out.
motion by Nancy, a second by Jeremy. Let's do a roll call vote on that. Let's do Kelly,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have an ordinance or anything. That's just a motion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Anything else, Nancy?
That's it for me.
Okay, Michael, do you have anything for council? Okay. Okay, Steve?
Just a community announcement. A week from this Saturday, February 18th, up at the Georgetown Eagles, beginning at 11 a.m., there is a fundraiser for a young lady here in our community who is awaiting a heart transplant. On that day, there will be, so if you go to the Eagles Lodge beginning at 11, I think there's a 5K race. Those folks were here a few meetings ago and talked about it. There'll be food trucks, live split the pot, Warrior Wall display, postcards to Nyla. This is the young lady. T-shirts for sale, games for children, raffle items, photography booth, and a DJ. So anybody that can make that event, it's a charitable fundraiser for this family and their needs would be greatly appreciated. One more time, that is February 18th up at the Georgetown Eagles beginning at 11 a.m. but going all day long. Thank you.
I forgot.
Okay.
Did we decide something about the CAT program, the CAT?
Don't bring that up.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. Kelly?
Few things. So, first item, so the budget committee met this evening. We've had a few meetings actually talking about multiple things around the budget, merit increases, pay scales, all of that stuff. So as part of the meeting this evening, we needed to assign or make a decision or make a recommendation to council for a merit increase for all of the employees within the village. It's that time of year. Reviews are underway. And as part of that, we typically do an increase in pay that can be allotted to the employees. If you recall, it's a merit pool. So we set the percentage of what that pool will be. And the supervisors, Art, Dale, they have the authority to go in and then assign that pool of money as a merit increase or a pay increase for a job well done. So it is our recommendation, and you'll have to listen to this because it's very detailed and a little different from years past, but it's our recommendation to set that merit pool first and foremost at a 3% merit pool for all departments except for the police department and the fire department. So again, let me restate that. First of all, it is our recommendation to set a 3% merit pool, again, as an increase for all departments except the police department and the fire department. Fire EMS, I apologize. And the reason we're taking them out of the equation is because we have chosen to give them a different amount for the merit pool simply because we just went through a revamping of pay scales for both of those departments within the last 3 months. So we think it's very fair to kind of simmer that merit increase down just simply because they've gone through that activity. We have not gone through that activity with all departments yet, and that is definitely on the horizon in 2023. So for the fire department and the police department and EMS, we recommend a 0.5% merit pool. So a 0.5% merit pool for both of those departments. So again, 3% for all departments except police, fire, and EMS, and a 0.5% merit pool for police, fire, and EMS. Again, those are to be used for merit increases. Okay, so I didn't make the motion. I will in a minute, but I wanted to stop right there and make sure that there weren't questions. And let me say one more thing additional. I had to make all kinds of notes on this because there are a lot of things here. Additionally, if you guys recall, when we made the pay scale changes for the fire, EMS, and police department, the two chiefs, Chief Freeland, Chief Rocky, and also Assistant Chief Staggs, all three of them opted out of taking increases on the pay scale for their job roles because they felt that it was more necessary for their employees to get money at that time. So they did not get any pay scale increases themselves. So they are the exception to the 0.5% department increase. So the 3 of them are the exception, and the 3 of them will fall under the 3% merit pool. So I'm going to pause right there because I threw out a lot of information. Did I make that clear, first and foremost?
Questions?
Okay, so then I'm going to, let me make sure I covered everything for that. Also, contract employees, there are 3 contract employees under the umbrella of the village. Natalie's one, Catherine's one, Art is one. This merit pool does not go in effect for them. We have set to review that at the next the actual meeting, the next meeting of council. So those 3 employees will get their review merit, however you want to look at it, after we have that discussion next meeting. Okay. A lot of information. Okay. So I will go ahead and make the motion then that, now that I've explained it, that the budget committee recommends, and I'm making the motion, I'm saying this all wrong, that we give a 0.5% merit increase to the fire department, EMS, 0.5% merit pool to the fire department, EMS, and police department. And in addition, we do a 3% merit pool for all other employees, to include the police chief, the fire chief, and Captain Staggs. That was my motion.
I'll second that motion.
We have that motion by Kelly. We have a second by Steve. Again, any more discussion?
Super quick question. You said you're going to revisit the actual police staff. Did you say that's on the horizon? You said something like that?
No, the contract employees are. And
That's
I was
what-
afraid there would be confusion. So even if you have it, I want to say it, maybe just a different set of lips, saying a little bit different way.
Thank you.
At a glance, it would look like you're putting a 3% merit pool for almost every worker in the village, but you're for some reason kind of discriminating against the fire department and the police and EMS, which isn't really the case. The reason that number is less of a merit, it's only a 0.5%, is those departments were recently rebracketed on what their minimum and maximum pays. And that rebracketing actually resulted in raises that were well above what historical merit raises are. In the past, we've done merit raises at 3%.
Yes.
That rebracketing for those individuals resulted in raises sometimes from 9 to 15%. It's very necessary to get them paid equal to their counterparts in surrounding areas. But it would be probably overkill. We wish we could pay everybody just as much as we could, but to rebracket them like that and give them an additional 3% merit pool on top of it. So
very much.
Yep.
So any other comments? We have the motion on the floor by Kelly, seconded by Steve. If there is nothing else, we'll do a roll.
I have a,
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
what was discussed about, step raises?
So step raises, that I was going to update you on that here in just a moment too. So yeah, let's keep that out of the motion, and I'll come back to that as soon as we vote so that we have clarity. Does that make sense?
How am I gonna vote on something I don't have a
Okay.
clear?
We're going to do it after. We're going to get through this year, and then we're going to start preparing for the raises next year, which will be step.
Right now, there are no steps where it's
Right.
100% merit based.
But it will take too long. If we do it now, it could be August before we got it figured out for these people to get a raise, which isn't.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah. So this was the,
Yeah.
Once again,
Not
motion by
necessarily what I
Kelly,
wanted to
second
do,
by
but-
Steve. Let's do a roll call vote. Mark,
I pass.
okay.
I
Jeremy,
don't understand, but okay.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Nancy,
yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed.
Okay, Mark. So I didn't want to confuse the two. I know Nancy's fought on this topic heavily, and rightfully so. But the merit increase is something that we started maybe 3 years ago, and doing that merit pool and giving each supervisor the capability to pay for the performance within their department. We went away from steps 3 years ago. and went to this merit pool. After looking at the data and really dissecting it, it's not working the way that it was intended. It could work very well, but it's not working the way that it was intended. And I believe we are on the budget committee, we are all of the agreement that we're going to take this year, that one of the high priority topics for the budget committee is to revamp the merit system and go back to steps.
Okay. I like steps a lot better because I think it's a lot more fair.
That's a discussion.
Yeah, that's a whole.
Yeah, let's
not go there.
But anyway, this has been a long enough meeting.
Kelly, do you have anything else?
Yes, I do. Okay, so then additionally, we have set another budget committee meeting, and that's on February 23rd at 4 p.m. here in the council chambers. All right. And then the other important item to go through as well, real quick, is the work sessions. We recently talked about the work sessions and organized a meeting to kind of kick those off as a council, which is another formalized meeting that we are now committing to do monthly as a council, assuming schedules align and whatnot. But one of the things that came out of that, the question being, should we get paid for those meetings? I am of the mindset that we should not. It's really a meeting for us to get together and really start working towards some common goals. So I make the motion that when we set work session meetings, that we are not paid for those meetings.
I'll second that.
Your discussion.
We have a motion by Kelly, a second by Nancy. Discussion.
For the record, I'll be voting that we don't get paid either. But just for clarification on those meetings, no, let's vote, and then can I ask a follow-up question about
I
that?
have something I want to ask.
I want to discuss something.
Let Michael go first. We'll get
Those
back.
aren't mandatory meetings, correct?
They are not.
That's what I was going to
Okay.
ask.
That's simple enough.
That was going to be my
It
question.
still is it's still looked at as a quote unquote meeting of the,
Yeah, the charter says that the only thing that can be penalized is if you miss regular meetings.
yeah.
That is
Thank
a
you.
special meeting.
Okay. I mean,
But
I'll do
in
my very, very
theory,
best.
we could be paid for it, or based on the charter, we
I
should,
don't
but
care about the pay. I'm
Right.
just not going to be held to that if I'm not getting paid.
Right.
I'm fine with coming to them if I can, but I don't want to be
Mike,
held
or
like it
Mark?
is.
I totally agree with Kelly. That $100 isn't going to make, you're funny. That $100 isn't going to make me or break me. I don't want paid for that. Thank you. You're a funny guy, Steve.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Kelly, second by, I guess it was Steve, wasn't it?
No,
Nancy.
Or Nancy, I'm sorry.
People confuse us all the time.
Similarities are striking, aren't they?
Just think
All right,
We're like
well, let's,
one.
if there's no more comments, let's do a vote. Kelly,
yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Kelly, when did you say that the next budget meeting is? For some reason,
February 23rd at 4 p.m.
February 23rd. Okay.
When is the next meeting that you guys, did you do any minutes from the last one?
I haven't, I just haven't gotten out
Okay,
yet.
and did you set a date for the?
We did, and I can't recall what it was.
There's a cemetery board meeting at 5:30, but we
Yeah.
should be done by that time, I would hope.
Bless you.
Okay, all right. Okay, anything else, Kelly?
Yes, thanks.
I'm really, Cakes for a Cause has started the planning, well, it's been in the planning works for a while. We have not set a next meeting date yet, but watch Facebook and that information will be coming out. Cakes for a Cause is on July 15th, just in case you want to mark your calendars. 5 to 11.
Before we end, Madam.
We're not done yet.
We're not
Oh, no, I know. Madam President has a birthday on the 23rd. Everybody say happy birthday to her.
Oh, geez, we're-
Did you just out her?
Huh?
I said, did you just out her?
Yeah. One thing that I need to bring up is there's been an issue out at the park with cats, a lot of cats, and people feeding a lot of cats. And it's becoming a bit of a nuisance out there. I've gone out the last couple of mornings. Chief Freeland's aware of it. A citizen brought up that there's a gentleman coming and taking a big bag of food and dumping it out, and cans of food and water for these cats, and they're out there. So we need to have some degree of control over how that is done. The chief has spoken to that individual. And I don't know whether it did any good or not, whether that person will be back or not, but we need to have something there that we could either charge them with littering or, signs, don't feed the animals or whatever the case may be, but it's become quite a nuisance out there. I went out there this morning, they hadn't put any cat food out, but the cats were already there, ready for the cat food to be delivered.
Can that not be helped with Art's, that program Art had for spaying and neutering?
Well, it could, but this person's also going, I think, behind Burger King and going to the
Okay,
fairgrounds.
all right,
And
okay,
it's
all right.
everywhere. So, Solicitor Braun, do you have any thoughts about that? About the cats? You want them? You want to take them home with you?
No, I think I had indicated that one thing we could do to control that is the police could cite them for littering. It was something I had talked to the mayor about earlier. If we're trying to stop individuals from doing it because they're leaving the cans and they're leaving the containers out there.
Cats or the people?
Both. They're not taking the cans. But I think it's something that I've seen done in an effort to send a message to someone to stop doing it, is to cite them for that, and they usually will stop. The other option is obviously we could look at something more broad when it comes to passing a park rule that says, don't feed the animals in the park. So we do have some options depending on what you'd like to have us do.
So at this point in time, since Chief has spoken with this individual, maybe that is enough to curtail it, but we'll have to keep monitoring it, and the neighbors out there will have to keep letting us know whether that's a continuous problem, and then we can move to the next step if necessary.
Man, that's gonna take like decades to get fixed. Cause I mean, even if you get those cats fixed, that's gonna take decades to fix.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how you do it.
Are you segueing into the?
Yes, I'm getting ready to segue into another thing. And since that's where we are with that, last year, Art brought up the concept and council approved of allotting $10,000 towards spaying and neutering of cats. And he had a veterinarian that would do that. And I think they did a marvelous job in reducing the cat population here because, there was more sterile cats around town. But that money has basically run out. He wanted to know whether this council wished to redo that again this year.
Clarity.
Yes.
That program's actually through the Brown County Humane
Yes,
Society.
yes.
Okay.
And they hire a veterinarian to
How
do
many
that.
did they end up taking off or actually?
I couldn't
Is
tell
there a
you.
list? Do we have?
They do.
It has numbers on that.
Yeah, I was supposed to set up, somebody coming and giving some of that data, but I can tell you, I'm on that committee. You can kind of do the rough math. It's about, they actually have about 4 different vets. It started with one.
Mhm.
They have 4 or 5 different vet agencies they rotate to. Some of them only charge like $45. Some of them charge like $90. The ones that are cheaper, though, are further away and you've got gas. So it's hard to take the $10,000 we give it and divide it by, but you can kind of do that and say 60, 70-ish dollars a cat divided by 10. And that gives you a pretty good idea of how many they did, but it's a significant amount.
So how much I know you're gonna ask council to tell us this.
10 grand.
How much? 10?
As much as a night of fireworks, and we can keep getting rid of our cat
Make
problem.
make all the cats he-she's, right?
Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay,
I think it's a great idea.
I make that motion.
We have a motion by Mark Robert Anderson to approve that expenditure again. Do we have a second? Okay, that's kind of a Kelly Steve combo there, but we'll call it Kelly. And any more comments? If not, let's do a roll call vote on this. Mark?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Only if that's it.
Your eyes are starting to droop a little bit, Michael. Our next regular council meeting would be Thursday, February 23rd at 7:00. You've been given the other meeting dates throughout this meeting. Is there anything else to be brought up before council?
Just wanted to say something real quick. It's past my bedtime too. I just wanted to state this because I just think it's a neat thing that they do. They've been doing it for several years. So I wanted to let the community know and if they wanted to go cheer these people on. But the Church of Christ is hosting Night to Shine tomorrow night. And
yeah,
that is
that's awesome.
basically a a prom for people that have disabilities. And I just think it's an awesome thing. It's tomorrow night. I believe it starts, let me see here. I believe it's 6:30. It might be 5:30. Let me see. 5:30 it starts. So if anybody wanted to go out there and cheer them on as they're going in, I think it'd be great. So
It's a real community. People get dresses and jewelry for 'em.
yes,
It's
The girls in
phenomenal.
cosmetology out of the
Yeah.
vocational do their hair and their nails. It's really a neat thing.
If you've ever seen the kids do it,
Comment too, didn't you?
I did have one error correction I had to make. It's super quick, but it's really important. When I spoke earlier, I got wound up when I was talking about, and I failed to acknowledge something I should have acknowledged. When I was getting information about the DORA, I definitely did have people speaking against it as well. I kind of got wound up. I'm sorry about that. I genuinely appreciate people coming here tonight and the people that called me on the phone today. Sorry I didn't mention that earlier. That is a definite oversight. I'm taking your thoughts into account. I'm done.
Before anyone else wants to announce anything else, let's entertain a motion to adjourn. Michael beat you, Steve here. All in favor signify aye. Meeting adjourned.
My office is closed. It's 10 o'clock.
Jeremy, what do I do over
We're live. We're live. Just hit the red button, Dale.
Watch it. Be careful what you're saying, Kelly.
No, not that on the screen. No. Hi, Kelly. There you go. There we go.